Good evening and welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Services Delegated Committee. Before we commence the meeting, I request that all mobile telephones are turned off or switched to silent. Thank you for that. My name is Councillor Nick Stavru and I chair this committee. I will start by introducing my fellow councillors, starting from the left of the horseshoe table with Councillor Jim Park, Councillor Sinfield, Councillor Hollingsworth, our Mayor, Councillor Galt, Councillor Di Gillies, Councillor Watson, Councillor Addis, Councillor Bigger and Councillor Franco. And I should say that Councillor Sinfield is our Deputy Mayor. I also acknowledge our CEO, Mr Phil Storer, to my right, and the Manager of Governance and Legal, Mr Brian Wee, to my left. There are other officers in attendance this evening, and they will be introduced as they present their reports. The purpose of the Service Delegated Committee is to deal with issues relating to the provision of human and physical services and council infrastructure. For those in the gallery presenting this evening, when we come to the agenda item, it will be introduced by an officer and they will then call you one by one to come forward and address the council. I will ask speakers to sit at the top of the horseshoe table and I will invite those against the officer's recommendation to speak first, followed by those in favour. When making a submission, you are requested to present your viewpoint clearly and concisely on why you agree or disagree with the proposal. You may suggest an alternative approach which will satisfy your concerns. Please do not repeat what earlier speakers have said and keep the discussion focused on relevant matters. There's a limit of 3 minutes for each speaker, and that includes councillors. As a chairperson, I reserve the right to vary that, but I will seldom do so. At the 2.5 minute mark, I will make this sound, which will indicate that you have 30 seconds remaining and you will need to conclude that presentation. And after you've spoken, please remain at the table while I ask if there are any councillors have any questions. Thank you for that. I'll turn to Mr Wee. Mr Wee, are there any apologies this evening?
Through you, Chair, Councillor Thompson is an apology this evening.
Thank you, Mr Wee. Noted. The next item is the adoption and confirmation of the minutes. Councillors, can I please have a motion to adopt and confirm the minutes of the Services Delegated Committee meeting held on the 13th of November 2023? Councillor Sinfield.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Councillor Gillies.
Seconded. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Councillors, is anyone opposed to this motion? There be no opposition. I put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. The next item, declaration of conflicts of interest of any councillor. Councillors and council officers, are there any conflicts of interest that you wish to foreshadow in the matters of the agenda tonight? There be no conflicts of interest. We'll move to the next item of the agenda. We've come then to the substantial part of the agenda, the presentation of officers' reports. The first item tonight, item 3.1, an options and analysis for Park Street parking facility. This item will be introduced by Mr David Cowan. I'll move to Mr David Cowan. Please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. At the Urban Planning Delegated Committee on the 13th of November 2023, officers presented the Glenferrie Place Plan for adoption. Councillors put the item on table and requested further information on the options for the Park Street parking facility, also known as the Lydiard Street car park. This report is now being presented to the Service Delegated Committee instead of the UPDC because the content of the plan does not specifically address matters under the Planning and Environment Act 1987 and on further consideration should be determined at the Services Delegated Committee. As requested, this report presents further information on the 3 options for the Park Street parking facility, including consideration of engagement outcomes, parking capacity, benefits for the centre, traffic implications and net project costs. Following appraisal on the merits of each option, council officers recommend option 1 involving a new multi-level parking facility on the southern part of the site be featured in the Glenferrie Place plan as it is considered to deliver additional parking capacity in an affordable manner while contributing to the future vibrancy of the centre. However, Council also could consider an alternative option to retain the existing car park on the site and make a decision to provide parking at a future time when parking demand has sufficiently increased. Following consideration of the additional background information on the Park Street parking facility It is recommended that the Glenferrie Place plan be returned to the table for consideration and adoption with a decision on the preferred car parking option. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cowan. Councillors, there are no people indicating that they wish to speak, so you may ask Mr. Cowan any questions, should you have any. Councillor Gold.
No questions, but when the time is right, Chair, I'd like to move the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Gold, there appears to be no other councillors wishing to ask questions, so this is your time.
Thank you, Chair. I have an alternative motion to put tonight, if that could be.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. I'll ask the officers to put the alternative motion up.
Through yourself, Chair, if I can just perhaps provide a little bit of clarification because it might assist the council in moving forward. We actually have two reports this evening. The first one is the report before you now, which is the options analysis for the Park Street parking facility. There is no substantive decision needed in relation to that parking facility for this report. It is simply information and context. The second report at item 3.2 will be the substantive decision that you need to make in regard to the place plan, and it is that report where you will need to make a decision around the preferred option for car parking. So if I can suggest that you may wish to proceed with this item and then move to item 3.2.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Then I will, if there are no further questions, would you like to move the
My
motion?
apologies, Chair. I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation with regard to 3.1.
Wonderful. Councillor Addis, would you like to second it?
I had a question, but I no longer do, and I'm happy to second it.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. So, is there any opposition to assist the mover or the seconder? There be no opposition. I put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Councillors, the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. We move now to item 3.2, the Glenferrie Place plan. This item will be also presented by Mr. Cowan.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. In light of the additional information provided in item 3.1, the Glenferrie Place plan is now presented for consideration. The Glenferrie Place plan seeks to uplift the attractiveness and performance of the Glenferrie precinct and receive strong community support during 4 stages of consultation. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank those who have contributed to the plan's formation, including more than 3,000 residents, traders and stakeholders who have shared their views. Officers recommend that Services Delegated Committee resolve to adopt the Glenferrie Place plan to guide the future revitalisation of the Glenferrie precinct. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cowan. We have one person wishing to make a submission tonight, Ms. Montserrat Pesamenti. Ms. Pesamenti, would you wish to come to the horseshoe table? Thank you. Just for the record, your name and suburb, please.
Montserrat Pesamenti, 69 Lisongrove, Hawthorne. Okay. I was a bit confused about the change of committee, but thanks David Cowan for explaining. I won't have to go over, and I was also confused about the recommendation from the last meeting not being put forward and not seen anywhere. But again, we'll see what happens after. Okay, I am in favour of anything at all happening at Glenferrie Road. You can start with whatever you like, But I would say that I would recommend to start with cosmetics like cleaning, painting, and planting. We have very little greenery, and it would cost very little to put a few more trees or planters or something hanging somewhere. There is no need to start with car parks or the 27 million of the Pakistan that will cost a lot and it'll take a lot of time. We need something very, very quickly. And please start with simple and fast and visible. And that may help all the empty shops that we are getting at the moment. We just lost Telstra, we lost 3 banks, and there are quite a number of empty shops. So I would please recommend to start doing something as quickly as you can. Thanks for your time. I won't take your time any longer. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pesamenti. Councillors, are there any questions for Ms. Pesamenti? Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Montserrat. Could you, if we adopt this report, we will undertake many more works than cosmetic works. And I'm wondering, do you still support those, even if we were to commence with the others?
Yeah, I do support the works, but I don't think that it depends how major the works are, because I do remember the recommendation made by Councillor Westgold last meeting, which was taking the 600 people that voted for option 2 and 3 and forgetting about the option 1. And I don't favor option 1, so we'll see what you people decide. Because it doesn't matter what we think, you seem to, well, you are our representatives and you do what you think is best, or what you inform is best. But I don't support option 1 at all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pesamenti. There have been no further questions, councillors.
Thank you.
Ms. Pesamenti, you can go back to the gallery. Thank you very much. Return to any comments there.
Through you, Chair, I think we'll just acknowledge the support from Ms Pesamenti and her interest in proceeding with implementation of the plan and improvement of the precincts as promptly as we can.
Thank you, Mr. Cowan. Councillors, questions for officers. I see Councillor Addis.
Thanks, Chair. I'm seeking clarification about how, having put the previous report on the table, that then interweaves with what we're doing here, because it seems one is somewhat dependent on the other, and I don't quite know how to see the sequence.
Through yourself, Chair, if I can answer that question. Essentially what has happened is that item 3.2 is the exact same report that was put on the table at the UPDC meeting previously. So that exact same report has been provided at item 3.2 to enable you to reconsider that Glenferrie Place plan, that item. However, the council has asked for additional information in regard to the car parking options. And that's where the item 3.1 this evening provided that additional information and outlined some of the detail around how those different options would work. And that was simply background information to help you understand the car parking situation before considering the substantive item that was placed on the table.
Can I follow that up, please?
Sure, Councillor.
So, if we were to support the recommendation, that would imply supporting option 1, in the Park Street, Lydiard Street car park?
Through yourself, Chair, that's correct. That's the officer's recommendation.
Thank you.
In the previous item.
Thank you.
I had Councillor Gold.
All right? No questions, but I will this time propose a motion when the time is right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. Again, it would appear that the time is now. Would you like to move a motion?
Thank you very much. The motion has just been put on the screen. I think this has been distributed this afternoon, so hopefully everyone's read it. But it has been pointed out to me that it may be worth tying it back to the report that's before us tonight, and that when it talks about a proposed Park Street facility, probably should be in brackets option 1, and retain the existing Lydiard Street car park should probably be followed in brackets by option 2, so it clearly ties this motion to the report.
Again, Chair, just to clarify, that's not option 3, I think should be.
Option 3, sorry. My apologies, yes.
Thank you, Mr Walker. Yep.
Yes, that's right. So that's the motion I'm moving tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. I'll leave the option a few minutes there to be read and seek a seconder.
I just have a question, if possible, before we go to that.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Bigger. There were no questions, but now...
Well, it's only...
Yeah, absolutely, please.
In response to how we've amended this, it just is, to me, it's unclear. I feel like, because now we're saying to remove the proposed Park Street parking facility, option 1, we're not removing it. We're not taking that option. I just think we might need to reword that for clarity. Your suggestion, I believe, Councillor Galt, is that we take option 3. So I think that even having in option 1 there potentially confuses the situation.
I think it says the Park Street option being removed from Initiative 4 and other sections of the plan. That's what it's referring to. I was quite happy with that when it was proposed.
Through yourself, Chair, perhaps it could be clarified to remove reference to the proposed Park Street parking facility might assist. However, essentially what's happened here is that officers have put forward a final place plan with option 1 Park Street facility in the plan. So the plan actually is presented to you as a substantive plan with option 1. By deleting reference to it, that removes that from the plan, and instead option 3 will be the one that replaces it. So in our view, we feel this can work and works correctly, but perhaps that could be clarified by saying remove reference to the proposed Park Street.
Mr Walker, apologies for that. I'm going to suggest that we suspend standing orders to get a motion that acceptable by all, and then move forward. Thank you, Councillor Addis. Do I have a seconder?
I'm happy to...
Councillor Bigger, thank you. So suspending order, the meeting's orders have been suspended so that we can more freely debate and settle on a motion that would be
We haven't voted
more
on
appropriate. Apologies. Thank you, Councillor Watson. I'll put the motion to the vote first. Those in favour of suspending standing orders? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. So we have now, for the benefit of the gallery, suspended standing orders where councillors will begin to debate and discuss the motion and get into a position where we're comfortable with.
Chair, I've got a
You
question.
do. Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. You have a question?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to officers, I'm wondering whether in fact, given the resolution on item 3.1 on tonight's substantive agenda, whether in fact it's easier to again lay this item on the table tonight and see the report as it's intended by Councillor Galt back before us, which would then take away the need for an ambiguous motion and a draft plan in the realm.
Mr Walker or the CEO?
Through Mr Chair, I think that the change which has just been made by Mr Walker working with our governance team, which talks about removing reference to the proposed Park Street parking facility option 1, probably is much clearer and deals, I hope, with Councillor Biggar's point, because we are talking about the place plan in which that document makes reference specifically to this proposal. So this is essentially saying to you that that should be taken out, and it also clarifies retention of the existing Lily Street car park option 3, which would therefore remain in the document as a proposition for the future. That's my understanding of what's being put forward, and I'm hoping that is sufficiently clear for councillors to be able to proceed.
Can I suggest that then further on, after option 1, in brackets, the retain becomes redundant, and you would actually be replacing this with references to the existing Lydiard Street car park? And then I'd be quite happy with that.
I have Councillor Adders. I have Councillor Adders followed by Councillor Watson. Councillor Adders.
I've heard what Mr Storer has said, and I think I understand it, but it seems to me that Park Street, as described in the report, could still be an option. We're just saying we're not supporting it at the moment. I'm not sure whether does it need to be removed totally? Or does that then imply that it's a live option rather than just one of the many options?
Perhaps the way I interpret this is that, first of all, the motion suggests you adopt the place plan. Then what it's doing is qualifying the adoption of the place plan by modifying reference to certain of the options, so that when you adopt it, it will reflect exactly the outcome you are seeking to deliver. That's what this is trying to do. If it's not clear as to the outcome, then we need to improve this, but that's my understanding of what this is seeking to achieve.
Can I just add to that, if I may? By not replacing it with a specific option, it isn't prejudging what council might decide in the future. It leaves that piece of land intact, and when parking is needed at some future time, some other options may be presented. Like, for instance, I think Councillor Watson at a previous meeting suggested we might look at a car park with residential above it. All that's there for the future.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. I might move to Councillor Watson. She was next. Thank you, Councillor Watson.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the last sentence and thinking that the words "if the need can be clearly demonstrated" is not necessary. If Councillor Galt's open to the amendment, that we put a full stop and to say at this location in the future. I don't think that a future council decision-making body should be directed that they must clearly demonstrate a need. Yep. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Frank.
In the future.
Can we move to change that? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Gold, you're comfortable with that? Councillor Franco.
Thanks. Just further clarification on this motion. I just want to check that I've got it right. So we'd adopt the plan, amend the plan, so the recommendation is the existing car park, and noting that future car parking could be provided, but without going into the details of the options. Is that correct? Is my interpretation correct?
Yes, that would be an accurate interpretation.
And is there anything in the motion that would preclude minor tweaks to the so there was previous, as I read it, previous iteration of this motion seemed to suggest to me that the current car park would remain as is. Now that's a fairly prescriptive approach and suggests that no minor changes can be made to the operation of the car park, and I wouldn't want to see that from an everyday practice. Are you reading any of that into this, and would we still retain that day-to-day flexibility to manage the car park in the most efficient and effective way?
Through you, Chair. The short answer is no, it wouldn't affect how you can manage the car park day to day. I guess stepping back, the Glenferrie Place plan is a long-term strategy vision type plan. So it sets some broad projects for the future. This motion is to adopt that plan with some modest amendments, which we're quite comfortable can be made, that just remove the references to that new proposed facility and images of that in the plan, and it just essentially leaves the site as it is, doesn't specify how it should be used in any particular way.
Thank you. Look, I'm satisfied with your answer, but you ended with those words, it leaves it as is. Now, I wouldn't want this strategy document to preclude council officers from undertaking minor changes. Now, I know that's not the intention, but I don't want someone coming along and saying, okay, well, you passed this. It has to say exactly as is now until we review a strategy document. And look, and I appreciate it's not the intention, and if the document's redrafted with that in mind, and that's the objective, I'm okay with it.
Yep. Through you, Chair. Yeah, it's not, the plan doesn't mention anything about how the car park should be treated, and the motion says clarifying that it may be provided in future, so we can include a sentence to that effect.
Thank you, Mr. Cowan. It appears that we've no further questions, and Councillor Galt's comfortable with the motion. It's now probably time to resume standing orders. I seek a motion to do that. I have Councillor Gillies.
So declared. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Councillor Addis.
Seconded. Resume.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. I put now the motion to the vote. Those in favour? No. Oh, sorry. Apologies. Apologies. I think we're all eager tonight. For the benefit of the mover and the seconder, do you have any opposition to that motion? There be no opposition. I'll put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, councillors, and apologies for that mishap. We have resumed standing orders, and we were at a position where we were making the motion into an appropriate one. Councillor Galt, do you wish to move your motion?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy with the motion as it currently appears on the screen.
Thank you, Councillor Galt. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Addis.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. Is there any opposition to this motion? Councillor Silverman, opposition is noted. Thank you. Now, given that there's opposition to the motion, Councillor Galt, as the mover, do you wish to speak to your motion?
I do, thanks, Chair. I'd like to start with thanking the officers for all the work they put into this report. It is a massive report, and bearing in mind that this concept of revitalising Glenferrie Road has been around since I'm advised 1992. There's some great proposals in this report or this plan, and it's very innovative. I only have one concern, and that's the one that's addressed in the motion tonight. That was the proposal that currently appears in the plan For option 1, the disposal of a portion of the car park and building a multi-storey car park. I'd like to put forward very quickly now 8 reasons why I'm against that. Number 1, the multi-storey proposed provides 42 more spaces, which I believe is simply unnecessary in a car park setup that has spare spaces of between 200 and 400 spaces at any one time. Number 2, it's a very expensive proposal. With a price tag of the multi-storey of 10 million, it comes out at $250,000 per parking space. I also think that the proposal for option 1 greatly diminishes the access. If I could just put a diagram up on the screen. Currently, most of the people using that car park come along Lydiard Street. Some use Park Street, and there's a choice of 3 entries into a very simple to follow car park. If I can then move to the next diagram, what happens then if you remove that block at the top? The Lydiard Street accesses all disappear. People approaching the shopping centre via Lydiard, which is a major draw area, have to go down William, then along Park through 1 entry. So I think, thank you, the access is greatly diminished. I also think the amenity of the car park is greatly diminished. The 6 entry points move down to 1, and instead of a simple flat car parking area, we have 5 different levels to choose from. Number 5, the land sale, I believe, conflicts with the property holdings principle of the council that before disposing, there must be no clear council or community need for that asset in the foreseeable future. Number 6, I think it's not prudent to dispose of land adjacent to such an important shopping strip. Number 7, I'd hate to see this set a precedent of selling land to support capital works projects. And number 8, I think if we did this now, it would wipe out the future opportunities that exist for this land, many of which will come real in time. So I hope and I encourage my fellow councillors to support this amended motion tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. Councillor Addis is the seconder. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your rights?
I might hold off, depending on what others say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. Councillor Sinfield, as the opposition.
Thanks, Chair. I welcome the amended motion as put by Councillor Galt, and I think that they're wise and prudent changes to be made at this time. I think that's sensible, and I concur with your comments in relation to the disposal of land and future-proofing that area there. I also note that that Lydiard Street's going to be increasingly important as we see a significant parcel of land change use from Laurentia Cycles to Dan Murphy's on the corner of Lydiard Street, and I dare say that that may change the behaviour of traffic in that precinct. My opposition to this plan is in relation to a couple of the initiatives, of which there are 9 incorporated in this plan. And I'll speak briefly to each of them, but I note that I'm standing on an island of 1, so I won't try too hard to convince my colleagues who appear to be satisfied with the report in front of them. My concern is primarily in relation to Initiative 5, the station laneways. I see that as beyond our control and not our land holding, and while we can try and influence other landholders like VicTrack and so forth to deliver a better outcome for the community, it's really not something that we have a huge amount of control over. Item 6, or Initiative 6, the cultural quarter, I see that as being so far down the track and potentially not a wise use of expenditure at this point, and creates hope and discussion in the community potentially, or angst in the community, depending on which way you look at things, and I don't think that that is prudent to incorporate that. It's quite separate from the thriving metropolis that is the Glenferrie precinct, where I think we should be trying to drive economic development and stimulus there. The creative community is another initiative that I am reluctant about. However, I do very much welcome the other initiatives in there, particularly the sports and rec initiative, and we'll be speaking to that in the next agenda item. So I'll leave my comments there and in fact might abstain from voting on this item altogether. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. There are no other councillors that wish to speak. Councillor Addis, I return to you as the seconder to reserve your right.
Just briefly, I suspect that it is reasonable to talk about the laneways, and I speak from the experience with Mailing Road and the place plan there, and admittedly with an enormous amount of work and perseverance that officers have worked well with the rail authority and actually have achieved some outcomes which the community is due to reap the benefit of. So I acknowledge that it is outside our control, but based on past performance, we just may be able to achieve quite a lot for the community by applying a similar, rather arduous process, but one that did reap rewards for us. So I'm happy to support it as is.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. Councillor Gold, I return to you to close off the debate if you wish.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to add a lot more, but I will add two very quick points. My other concern with option one is that the time it would take to construct it might damage some businesses in the area, and might seriously long-term damage them. That was my other concern. But apart from that, I have really nothing to add to the 8 points I put before, and I'd be happy to put the motion when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. Having exhausted all the councillors wishing to speak, I put now the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Oh, apologies. The motion is carried. Apologies. It's not my night, it appears, tonight, so apologies for that. We now move to item 3.3, the Michael Tuck Stand and Glenferrie Road Oval. This item would be presented by Mr. Andrew McHugh. Mr. McHugh.
Thanks, and through you, Chair. The Tuck Stand was built in 1937 and was listed on the Victorian Heritage Register in 1992. The Tuck Stand is not currently fit for use, and significant work is required to enable it to support activity on the adjacent Glenferrie Oval. A vision and design brief was established to provide direction for the project and identify proposed uses of the Michael Tuck Stand and Glenferrie Oval. It was informed by a review of demand analysis, contextual information about the site, including the location being adjacent to residential properties, being part of an activity centre, the history of the site, and being consistent with the master plan and community consultation. A broad suite of uses is proposed that will activate the space and appeal to a cross-section of community members. There is long-term flexibility which will enable the use to change in line with changes in community trends. The vision and design brief was circulated as part of the community consultation between the 14th of August and the 11th of September. 60% of people supported the draft vision for the Michael Tuck Stand and Glenferrie Oval revitalisation, 27% did not support it, and the remainder were unsure. Based on the strong level of community support, it is recommended Council endorses the vision and design brief. It is important to reiterate that the oval and building can be flexible to support changes of use in the future as required. Finally, we recognise this is a supplementary report, so it was available a little later than usual. However, it is essentially the same as the vision and design brief that has already been shared with the community, other than the introduction of an expression of interest process for tenants of the shared community spaces. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McHugh. This evening, everyone, 14 people have indicated they wish to make a submission on the matter, 5 are against and 9 support the recommendation. I will start with those against the recommendation. I call to the horseshoe table Mr. Bill Gaganis. Mr. Gaganis, please proceed, followed by Mr. Ray Verratti. Mr. Gaganis, you have 3 minutes, and if you could start with your name and suburb, thank you.
Bill Gaganis, Baldwin.
Please proceed. Yeah, thank you.
I've been involved with the club since its inception back in 2015 in numerous roles, currently football operations and council liaison. Football Victoria last week advised Alamein Football Club that it will not be permitted to host senior and under-20 women's matches at Dorothy Laver West Reserve for the 2024 season due to FV's NPL facility standards shortfalls, i.e. seating for 150 people, amongst other items. We appreciate the current investment that the council is making with the surface renewal at Dorothy Laver West. However, this will sort out only one of a few issues that we have with the venue. We are currently challenging Football Victoria's decision and have a meeting with them on Thursday. However, we're not confident that we'll be able to find a resolution on that matter at this point. If Council votes in favour of the officers' proposed recommendations, will Council invest in Dorothy Laver West facilities to ensure its compliance in future? Irrespective of the decision you make this evening, it is essential that Council develop a soccer strategy for Burundara. There is no Council-owned NPL compliant facility in this LGA. We have 2 female football clubs in the NPL women's competition, and both are currently being forced to play outside the LGA. We find this isn't good enough for our female players. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaganis. Councillors, any questions for Mr. Gaganis? Councillor Vicker, followed by Councillor Addis.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Gaganis, can I just check then, I understand your views about Dorothy Laver Reserve, but are you hoping then, in terms of the context of the decision that we're making tonight, you're opposed to the recommendation because you would like to see, rather than cricket and footy, you would like to see soccer played on that pitch? Is that your main?
I believe it's a pretty good opportunity for the advancement of women's soccer in this LGA, given that it already has a grandstand. It is too small for senior Aussie rules, too small for senior cricket, and I think it's a tremendous opportunity in that regard.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaganis. I beg your pardon, it was not Councillor Addis, it's Councillor Gillies.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. And my question is sort of a follow-on from Councillor Biggers, because it was going to touch on that area too. But could you clarify, please, what club you are representing? Because you mentioned a couple of clubs have NPL requests,
Correct.
but you didn't actually say which club you're representing.
Sorry, finish your question.
Alamein?
Alamein FC, yes.
Just
correct.
Alamein?
Yeah, I represented one of those 2, okay. Alamein FC.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Then Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Gaganis, thank you for your presentation. You mentioned a couple of things that I think are worth checking on. How important is seating or a grandstand for Alamein, which I understand is a women's-only club, specifically the seating issue?
It's important in one respect. It is a minimum requirement that Football Victoria have for the competition. Secondly, it provides an opportunity for supporters, family, to be able to sit comfortably and watch, whether it's their junior girls that are playing or whether it's the senior women that are playing.
And how much seating do you currently have at Dorothy Laver?
None.
None. And are there any soccer grounds in Burundara that have a seating or a grandstand?
For football, for soccer?
For soccer to be, I'll use
I
that.
don't believe so.
Okay. And you mentioned that if we don't provide this facility here, we need, if we're going to support the club, to provide a grandstand somewhere for the club. Is that correct? And your preferred location, if we didn't go ahead with Glenferrie as the location of the tuck stand?
Correct.
Okay. And that would ideally be Dorothy Laver. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that. Oh, actually, one further question. Just thinking, Council did support the establishment of Alamein FC as a NPL club and committed to the club to provide compliant facilities. Is that correct?
That is correct. We required that as part of our submission back in 2015 when we tendered for a NPL licence with Football Victoria, and we had a letter of support from Council supporting that they will provide an NPL facility for us.
And have we ever done anything about that?
Dorothy Laver was supposed to be, which was provided to us back in late 2018, was supposed to be the ground that supplied to us. However, it was still falling short at that time, and we found it very difficult to move forward with it to get it into that compliance phase with Football Victoria.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gunnis. Councillor Watson is next.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Deganis, for your presentation. I just have a couple of questions that are sort of rolling around my head. You particularly mentioned that a grandstand is very attractive for you and that it's something that you believe is really important. Is it reasonable? And I understand we're talking about this tuck stand, and so, but you've gone on to say that there are no facilities in Burundara. You're talking about grandstand facilities, not playing soccer facilities. What are you referring to when you say there's no facilities in the LGA?
There are no NPL compliant facilities in the LGA.
Okay, so it's not, you're not talking about a grandstand, you're talking about just an oval.
No, we're talking about the whole thing. We're talking about a grandstand as well as a compliant pitch to play the game on, but also having, there are other minimum standards within the facility standards that have been provided to council officers over the years, and was also part of the discussion with Dorothy Laver West Reserve initially back in 2018. And that was just one part of it, having seating for 100 or covered seating for 150 people. There's other issues such as there's got to be specific for change rooms, got to be gender specific change rooms, medical room, that type of thing, amongst others. There's a few other things too.
Okay, so why is a grandstand so important? Because as you know, I mean, I live in North Balwyn, and they play football and cricket up at Greythorn Park. There's no grandstand. They play soccer on Balwyn Road. There's 2 soccer fields there. There's no grandstand, and I can't think of any facility for suburban sports that most kids play where you would need a grandstand. So why does soccer need one, but football and cricket and the other, they don't need one? Could you help me with that?
Well, if you look at Dorothy Laver West Reserve, there is absolutely nowhere for anyone to sit and watch the game, not even benches, anything. So we've got a grass mound and that's it. So on wet days, there's nowhere even under cover to watch the game from because the pavilion is in an odd sort of location to where the actual pitch is. So there's no comfort at all for any of the supporters. Now, a lot of the other grounds have pavilions which are a lot more advanced than what's at Dorothy Laver. Granted, it's a bit older and it's probably, there's other priorities that the council has at the moment with those, but at the end of the day, that is unfortunately one of the requirements that Football Victoria has, is that because with the NPL senior competition, it's the top tier of the league in the state. We do have one. I mean, there's. I'll give you an example. There is a ground on Camberwell Road.
Camberwell Sports Ground,
which hosts the VAFA team, I believe. I can't remember, and also a district cricket team, and that has a grandstand and soft ground. So I don't understand why there is no other. For soccer there is no facility with a grandstand.
Okay, thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Look, I think we might want to focus the questions on the topic of tonight, rather than asking too many questions about why a grandstand or not a grandstand. There is a topic on focus tonight. I will go. Having said that, I'll go to Councillor Hollingsworth as the next question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Dianis, thank you for your presentation and obviously answering the questions asked. My question's fairly simplistic. Can you just advise how many members you actually have and how many junior and how many senior?
Okay, so we're female only. We have expanded to 7 squads because we've added an under-12s and an under-10s, which will play in a community competition. I would say, because we've only got the 7 squads, it'll be about just over 100 players.
Right. And what's the oldest age group you have at the moment?
Seniors, open seniors.
Open
senior
seniors.
Women, yeah. So it's open senior women, under 20s, under 17s, under 15s, under 13s, under 12s and under 10s.
And sorry, roughly how many hundreds? How many in total members, roughly? Just an estimate.
Probably about 120.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Gillies.
Thank you, Chair. I know it's a second bite of the cherry. Could you just clarify for me, please, given there's some dissatisfaction clearly with Dorothy Laver West, if there were an opportunity for you to engage in an expression of interest, would you be looking to move your home grounds to the Glenferrie Oval, away from Dorothy Laver? Or are you wanting to have use of both?
No, we'd probably look at expressing an interest in Glenferrie Oval.
And relinquishing other sites?
Correct.
Thank you.
We've only got that one site. We've only got Dorothy Laver. We don't have any other. Yeah.
Councillor Gillies, are you comfortable with the answer? No worries. Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Dianis, I'm just wondering what your role or title is at the club and if you're speaking on behalf of the club when you answer questions like the one just put to you by Councillor Gillies.
Yes, football operations.
And sorry, you're speaking on behalf of the club?
Yes, correct.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Gaganis. There appear to be no further questions. You may return to the gallery.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Mr. Ray Verratti, followed by Ms. Catherine Stamatopoulos. If you could proceed with your name and suburb, sir.
Yep, Ray Verratti, Glenorris. Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for allowing me to present tonight. I'm the president of Ashburn United Soccer Club, and thank you for all our soccer community for attending as well on this important matter. We're a club of 1,000 members with over 65 teams that cater for all players of all abilities. 2024 marks our 45th year of providing service to the community, both on and off the pitch. So it's not just about on, it's also off. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge and thank the Council for putting sporting infrastructure back on the agenda with planned ground and pavilion upgrades over the next 4 years. It's really great to see, and thank you for the progress that's been made. With regards to the Glenferrie Oval and Tuck Stand, our initial reaction to the proposal for the revitalisation is how can $27 million on one facility be beneficial to the wider sporting community that are crying out for the other 54 other venues to be brought up to standard. That was our thrust, and we made a series of submissions on that. But after reading the report, I suppose we do not think that a renovated grandstand which does not cater for A-grade sports, regardless of the code, is a good use of public money. The grandstand will live when used as a grandstand is our firm belief. And that's what Alamein could do by providing that grandstand somewhere for supporters to actually use. But I do note on page 6, and the last dot point of the report refers to the potential to free up capacity elsewhere for another year-round soccer facility. So from our point of view and our club, we've made submissions on a major upgrade at Warner Reserve in the Solway ward, either as a full soccer facility or as a hybrid venue with junior cricket. We've had initial conversations with Ashburton Willows Cricket Club, who also support this idea in principle. The Warner proposal aims to share a number of other facilities across multiple community clubs to get the best use of the space. We believe this is a great chance to innovate and partner with multiple stakeholders. So while we believe Glenferrie Oval would be well suited for a dedicated facility, we can concede that a redevelopment of Glenferrie Oval, as described in the report, as proposed, should provide more space and an opportunity to focus Warner Reserve as a prioritised soccer venue. The city has developed many soccer strategies over many years. Our club's wish is that if the council adopt the officer's report, it generates an immediate and clear focus to prioritise a dedicated soccer facility. Finally, we question the growth numbers for soccer in the report, and this needs to be interrogated properly. We can't believe there's 2,500 people registered when there's 15 clubs. We're one and we have 1,000. Doesn't add up. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Verratti. Councillors, are there any questions for Mr. Verratti? Councillor Franco, want to focus the questions to the paper tonight, please.
Thank you. And Chair, in relation to the grandstand, I think it is important because the Tuck Stand is a grandstand. So anyway, I'll ask my questions. Just on player numbers, how many roughly do you have?
997 exactly.
Okay, so there is then something unusual about the numbers in the council report. In terms of the structure of the club, could you explain what competitions the club plays in what age groups, whether there's male, female?
Yep. So about 250 female players. Our players range between 4 years old and I think our oldest is 69. We have, so all those different cohorts from 4 years old right up to over 55s.
And do you have players in an NPL competition as well as junior and community competitions?
Yep, we're all players for all abilities. So we have 4 junior boys, NPL. And just to clarify, NPL is just another way of saying A grade. So, you know, if it's A grade footy, A grade cricket, A grade soccer. So the word gets used like it's something different, but it's just an A grade comp.
And if council were not to support your NPL players or facilities, would that damage the club in any way?
It does. Probably not to the same extent as Alamein. They have because they have a senior setup. The requirements are a lot stricter. For us, it's just about having good playing surfaces predominantly good playing surfaces for our A grade teams.
And the use for soccer facilities through the year. I mean, we sometimes hear that Australian rules football is winter and soccer is therefore winter and soccer doesn't mix with cricket. Do you have programs that run all year or is it just in the winter?
No, I would say probably about 250, I would say. Say 200 to 250 members would play a 10-month season. And again, that's not dissimilar to AFL or cricket. So cricket, A-grade cricket will start training early. So, as I said in my presentation, I think there's an opportunity to work with the other clubs to try and cross over our needs rather than just looking at 6-month blocks.
And in your support for the soccer vision or alternate vision in the report, which is what I presume you're advocating, that's not necessarily for the immediate benefit of your club, is it, or for the sport overall, or?
Sorry, do you mean...
I presume you're advocating for the alternate vision in the council report which focuses on soccer?
Yes, but what I'm saying is if you go with the recommendation of just footy and cricket, hopefully that frees up space, i.e. Warner Reserve, to enable that to be dedicated to soccer.
So you would need a facility for the club to function effectively. Does that include a grandstand as well, or
Councillor
clubhouse?
Franga, can you frame that as a question? Because I'm not.
Okay, if we, I'm trying to understand what Mr. Virati is recommending specifically in relation to the proposal. There's a vision and an alternate vision, and if the vision is adopted, he's saying that there's an opportunity there to cater for an alternative need, and I'm trying to understand that and get absolute clarity on that.
Absolutely, I'm happy. I know your question though. What is the question, Mr. Virati?
Just to clarify what that vision might entail and how it relates to that report.
So if the report's passed as is, which is Glenferrie Oval just used for AFL and cricket, my position would be, or our position is, well, that should free up space elsewhere, and a dedicated soccer facility could be identified elsewhere, and I'm advocating for Warner Reserve, because I think that's for a number of reasons. Alternatively, and this is why I objected, I think the right decision is that it is used for particularly women's NPL, because it's a grandstand that could be used, and that's that seems logical.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Franco. Councillor Gold.
Thanks for your presentation, Mr. Virati. I'd just like to pick up one of your points. I understand our report recommends AFL and cricket. Cricket would play during the summer. I also understand that it isn't used for that at the moment. So I would think if the pitch is put in at Glenferrie, it would possibly free up a lot of other pitches. I'm reading into what you're saying that the pitches vacated by those players may be suitable or even more suitable for soccer. Would you mind commenting on that?
Yeah, that's the pick of the bad bunch for us. So if you go with AFL and cricket, we would like to think that would consolidate some those users to free up an opportunity for another dedicated soccer facility.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. There appear to be no further questions, Mr. Virati. Thank you for your presentation.
Thanks.
You may return to the gallery. Ms. Catherine Stamatopoulos, please, followed by Mr. Sidney Allen. If you could start with your name and suburb, Ms. Stamatopoulos.
Good evening. Catherine Stamatopoulos, President of Alamein FC Glen Iris. I address you tonight in opposition of the recommendation for the Michael Tuck and Glenferrie Oval revitalisation dedicated for women's AFL and women's cricket, and propose councillors consider Women's Football Centre. I've come before you tonight to highlight the compelling reasons why our council and local government in Boroondara should wholeheartedly invest in women's soccer. While I'm sure individual decisions may have already been decided, I want to reiterate that this isn't merely about kicking a ball on a field. It's about kicking down barriers, shattering stereotypes and scoring goals. Investing in women's soccer is an investment in the future for our community. By providing robust support and facilities, we send a powerful message that women and girls deserve the same opportunities as their male counterparts. This is not just about sport, It's about creating a level playing field where talent knows no levels or gender. Moreover, the economic impact cannot be ignored. Robust women's soccer facilities and programs attract fans, sponsors and investments. And at a location like Glenferrie Oval, there are several at a location like Glenferrie Oval, it isn't just about the beautiful game. It's about the beautiful synergy between sports and local economies. It could be a win-win solution, empowering women and boasting financial prosperity in Boroondara. Beyond the economic aspect, investing in what could be seen as a significant state-of-the-art women's soccer facility is an investment in wealth and health and well-being. Participation in sport fosters healthier lifestyles, instills discipline and contributes to the overall physical and mental well-being. When we invest in women's soccer, we invest in the health and resilience of our community. Glenferrie Oval and the revitalisation of the Tuck Stand could be something of a standout piece in the inner city and the LGA of Boroondara. We could become trailblazers for equality, inspiring younger generations to dream big and pursue their passions regardless of their gender. I'd just like to say, in conclusion, I implore you to consider what impact your decision today will mean. Supporting and complying to the Fair Access Policy and investing in women's soccer is not just a line item in your budget. It's an investment in empowerment, equality and community development. It's about creating a legacy where every woman and girl can step onto that field with the knowledge that their community and local government stand firmly behind them. So let us not only invest in soccer fields, but invest in future where every goal scored echoes a triumph of equality, and a facility like this would absolutely pave the way for Boroondara. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stamatopoulos. I have one question. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Danilopoulos. Listening to what you said, talking about growth in soccer female participation in particular, if there was a decision by council to support soccer being used at Glenferrie, my understanding is there would have to be some sort of amalgamation of clubs. Is that what you would be thinking?
So there's definitely been a discussion. As Bill mentioned earlier, there are 2 NPL women clubs in Boroondara that do not have NPL compliant facilities. Alamein would absolutely be comfortable in a co-share with Boroondara Eagles, which would enable their club and our club to have NPL standard facilities to ensure a facility like the Michael Tuck Stand and Glenferrie Oval is used at the capacity that it should be used. It is a professional league at the highest level played within Victoria, and we do not have facilities to support that currently in Boroondara. Boroondara Eagles play outside of the LGA, and Alamein is significantly at risk of that happening to us in 2024 and potentially beyond.
Thank you. You've answered that very well. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Franco.
Thank you. The question's largely been answered, but I just want to clarify, if your women's team, the senior women's team, can't play in Boroondara, where are they likely to have to play, and what would that mean for the club?
Well, the letter we received from Football Victoria recommends that they now have a vacant facility at Knox, so it would be out of Boroondara. It would be at the cost of the club, over and above, something that we have not budgeted for. And with the remediation work happening at Dorothy Laver early in the new year, with 2 brand new pitches, which we are absolutely grateful at the investment, we still are not compliant across all of the NPL requirements. So regardless of that investment, we will still have pain points. Our pitches will be of a better quality, our players will be at less risk of injury, but in its totality, the facility will still not meet the requirement that it needs.
And for Boroondara Eagles, I know you're
They're
not a
playing, I believe, I'm not sure of the council, but they'll be playing at the Venator Club in Bulleen.
And for the facilities for So the tuck stand would provide a ready facility because of the grandstand primarily for you and for your club and for the Burundara Eagles women's team?
Yep, it will enable growth. So Alamein this year, as Bill mentioned, has expanded finally into community pre-MPL program. Pre this year, we haven't been able to commit because the facility has not been at standard, the ground has not been at standard, so it has inhibited our club to grow and expand. The new works that are happening early in the new year has enabled this to happen, but in a facility like, Glenferrie Oval, it could be limitless. There are so many opportunities for Burundara to invest and enable the game to grow with a facility like that in the inner city suburbs. There is nothing. You need to go to Bandura or Darebin or Knox. There is nothing available. This is a game changer for Burundara. While I appreciate women's AFL and women's cricket, I implore you to consider what your decision today actually means for women's football and the progression of this game. We've just held a Women's World Cup,
Chair.
and now
Point of order,
Matilda's
the Speaker's been able to make her submission.
Oh.
She is responding to the question, and
Sure.
she is after a fashion. Yes.
Yeah.
If you finished, I do.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is there a question, Councillor Sinfield? Is there a question?
No, I don't have a question. I was raising a point of order that I thought that was an exceptionally long response to a question.
I'm going to allow it to pass. If there's no other question, I do have a question for you, Mr. Matopoulos. Just look at it sort of a bit from the further up from just your code.
Yep.
If there's more demand for other codes competing with your code, what do you say to that in terms of facility allocation?
Well, I think if I read the proposal, it's for more for junior sport. Is that not correct? Or is it for... what I would say to that is that, you have a competition that supports both junior and senior women football, and we don't have facilities available. And if we're talking about spending potentially $27 million on a revitalisation stand and an oval for junior sport, I think that's an overstatement.
Thank you for that. There are further questions. You may return to your seat.
Thank you so much.
The next speaker is Mrs. Sydney Allen, followed by Mr. Sebastian Hassett. I beg your pardon.
Hi.
Hi.
Sydney Allen, Glen Iris. I'm speaking on behalf of Alamein FC as well as
Thank
Kathy
you.
and Bill. Is it okay to go?
Please proceed.
I'm very excited to be here. I'm from the US, so this is a bit new for me, so take it easy. I'm very excited to talk about the Glenferrie Oval. I think it's in a very exciting time for women's football. The landscape has just significantly increased over the past decade, especially these last few years, and especially this past year with the World Cup. The largest in World Cup history, and it was in Australia, so what does that tell you? That the support is there, the people want it, it's time to invest in it. It's not just women's sport in general, but football, it brings in crowds, it's exciting, it's fun, it brings in kids, boys, girls, everyone can play it. It's just an amazing sport that includes everyone. Alamein is a female-only club, which there's hardly any, if not, we're the only one, which goes to show that it's there, the support is coming. The social impact it has in women's sports will just ripple through society, breaking down stereotypes, promoting gender equality, which is something that women have been striving for forever, almost. In England, playing football was banned until the 1970s. So this is huge for everyone, for this sport. In my 2 decades of playing football, which doesn't look like it, but I've played that long, I've seen female players and women's teams take a backseat to their male counterparts in almost every aspect of the game, regardless of performance or titles won. And it's our turn to come first. It's our turn to be put in a position to succeed, to give in the facilities and the support and the investment that we deserve. And I truly believe that we've earned our place on the global stage, and it's time to reflect that in our facilities. You know, by supporting this, you could be providing a pathway for the next Sam Kerr, you know, Steph Catley, all these women that have come through. Like, this is the opportunity to give these younger generations something to look forward to. You know, they look out onto the field and they see women playing on a facility that's just their own. There's nothing like that feeling. So in conclusion, it's a game changer for women's football. It's a transformative step for our community. It's an investment in equality, inclusivity, and the future of sport in our region, and will build a legacy that generations to come will be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Any questions for Ms. Allen? Councillor Bigger.
Thank you, Sydney. You mentioned that you have felt in your experience as a player of 2 decades, which is very amazing. You obviously started young. That you felt often put behind the men's or the boys' team. In your current situation right now, where you play, is that, do you feel can you tell us what makes you feel that those facilities are not as good as you think you would like to see?
For Alamein right now?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the surface itself is very dangerous. We've had people roll ankles, had puddles on the field, sand all over the field. It's quite dangerous to actually train on. The change rooms are quite small for a very large team. We all do love each other, but people like their space a little bit. The physio's got creaky beds, like the room's filled with spiders and things. Like there's just there's no grandstand, and you know, my parents come from the US to come watch me play, and we want juniors to come watch us play. They want to be comfortable. It kind of just shows the support behind it, just to have these little things that can help build a big club.
So it sounds like it's not just the field for you, it's more than just the pitch.
It's the environment. It goes a long way.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. There be no further questions. You may return back. Thank you for your presentation. The final speaker opposed is Mr. Sebastian Hassad. Could you please come to the horseshoe table? Thank you, Mr. Hassad. Begin with your name and postcode. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Sebastian Hassad. I live in Abbotsford. Tonight I represent Football Victoria, where I am the Head of Government Relations and Strategy. And it is a great pleasure that I've been invited to speak on behalf of Football Victoria about their plan to redevelop Glenferrie Oval and the Michael Tuck Stand. In this country, no sport is growing like football. In our sporting tastes, Australia is changing. We are becoming a football nation before our very eyes. And if we suspected this before the Women's World Cup, we definitively know it now. And to accommodate that change, we must make change. When urban Melbourne was being designed and laid out, we built ovals, thousands of them. We put cricket pitches in the middle and we put Aussie rules posts at the end. We did not put in football pitches. That's the legacy we deal with today. And in Burundara, since the 1850s, how many facilities have been built to the exact specifications of football? None. How many have been built to the exact specifications of NPL? And how many have been done so to accommodate women and girls? None. And yet, our game continues to find a way. As we move into 2024, football in Victoria is growing at such a rate that our facilities simply cannot cope. We wish we had unlimited green space in which we could placate this demand. Alas, we do not. We must seek solutions within the recreation spaces already dedicated for sporting use, and that means some uncomfortable and challenging conversations like the one we're having tonight. The orthodoxy of supporting the same sports, however, over and over is no longer fair, nor applicable, nor acceptable in modern multicultural Victoria. Football grew at an average of exactly 15% this year in our state, and on the back of the Women's World Cup, we expect probably another 15% next year. However, one thing that has alarmed us at Football Victoria is the very minor percentage growth in the inner suburban ring in Melbourne, where numbers remained strangely relatively static. When we began asking the clubs in these areas why it was so, the answer came back, almost screamed at us in a way, we are full. We can't fit in any more players and we have begun turning players away. One club has a waiting list of 400. It is shocking, it is alarming. We are desperate to fix this. What that means is that players and their families end up trekking across Melbourne looking for clubs that will take them in. Each Saturday morning sees something of a great migration across Melbourne in search of football, and in Football Victoria we just wish they could play at their local club in appropriate facilities. It's not a problem unique to Burundara, but we have a unique opportunity to solve it. This year marks 50 years since elite Aussie rules left Glenferrie Oval and indeed Burundara itself. The Oval has sat largely unused and unloved in that time, its dimensions gradually scaled back. However, it is deserving of a new lease of life, and that's the proposal that we are considering tonight. By turning the facility into a fit-for-purpose, high-performance community football centre capable of hosting NPL matches, we can breathe new life into Glenferrie Oval and the Michael Tuck Stand.
Thank you, Mr. Hassett. Your time has expired. I appreciate that. Any questions for Mr. Hassett? Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Hassett, you mentioned that you were Government Relations and Strategy. What minister do you represent?
The Minister for Community Sport, Ross Spence. But I work for Football Victoria.
You work for all Victoria? You don't work...
Football Victoria.
Oh, you work for Football Victoria, okay.
My apologies if that was not clear.
Yeah, no, when you just said Government Relations and Strategy, I had no idea
My apologies.
what that meant. So you're here from Football Victoria?
Yes.
That makes a little bit more sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Chair. Just picking up on one of the points that you raised about making the facility both NPL compliant for high level or A-grade sport, as one of the previous speakers said, and community, making it available for higher grade sport is not exclusive of community sport, is it? Is that the vision, that it could be something that encompasses all levels? Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. We see no reason why it couldn't, but in order for it to facilitate the higher levels of sport, you do need things like the grandstand, which I know have been discussed already tonight.
And from Football Victoria's point of view, I mean, because we are dealing with a grandstand, how important is a grandstand for high level sport? Absolutely essential for the higher tiers of the sport, and that would be the primary reason why, as we've unfortunately had to do, write letters to Alamein and to NPL clubs excluding them from playing here because there is no NPL compliant facility in the city of Burundara. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. There appear to be no further questions. Mr. Hassett, you may return to the gallery. Thank you for your presentation. We now move to those that are supporting the recommendation. I would invite first Mrs. Judith Bose to come to the horseshoe table. And it will be followed by Ms. Jessie Dool. Thank you, Ms. Bose.
Good evening. I'm Judith Bose and I'm here as President of the Kew Historical Society. Thank you, Chair and Councillors, for the opportunity to speak tonight on this item. I've just got brief notes, unbeknown to me. The Kew Historical Society supports activation of the Michael Tuck Stand and retention of its historical structure. It's important to ensure it's a living, thriving building, not just a monument to the past. To maximise this outcome, the community heritage spaces will require appropriate fitting out to accommodate the current and future needs of the historical societies to ensure we remain leaders both within Boroondara and the broader Victorian and Australian historical communities. In support of this need, it should be noted that Kew Historical Society is a Class B place of deposit, which is bestowed by the Public Record Office of Victoria, and they're the Class A, so we're just one below. We hold original public records from local state government agencies, which is a formal recognition of our status as a superior historical society in Victoria. Furthermore, the historical societies generate external grants and in-kind support for projects which benefit the Boroondara community through our activities and acquisitions. This form of acknowledgement of our reputation and successes reflect well on Council through your generous support of us. However, Kew is concerned about the project timing and completion date 27-28 of Stage 3 for Level 1, due to the fact that we'll be without a home for a number of years when the Kew Library project commences at the end of 2024. This is another project that the Kew Historical Society has been involved in and contributed to the project brief over many years. We have been engaged in discussions on the future development of the tuck stands since 2017. At that stage, funding for the project over the 5 to 7 years was determined by Council for a completion date 2024. We would like it noted that the consecutive timing of these two projects will have a detrimental effect on us in terms of finding a temporary location, storage of our archives and collections, plus inability to hold our quarterly book sales, which generate untied operational income for the Society. In closing, as a long-time resident of Boroondara, who regularly swam at the former Glenferrie pool and attended football matches at Hawthorn, I believe this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Council to bring this important and highly recognised modern-style building to the forefront of Council's assets to showcase it as a revitalised living heritage building. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Vose. I have Councillor Addis, followed by Councillor Watson.
Thanks very much, Ms Vose. Welcome back to the chamber.
Thank you.
You're currently at the Kew Library, and you talked about the disruption and not quite knowing where your future will be. Does your society have a view on where you'd ideally like to be? And I guess I'm saying, is it Kew Library or is it here, or are you not able to give us a view?
Yes, I can. And in an ideal world, it would be wonderful to have the Kew Library redevelopment built to a specification and the funding appropriate to it for us to remain there in Kew.
And just to follow up, and the current facilities, I'm assuming, don't meet your needs? I know you're very crowded.
Definitely not. If you're looking at something for the future, as I've said, we're a very highly recognised society. We hold the largest collection of archival material. We have recently been given a national treasure, and that's the Henty collection, and it will be ongoing. So this is really quite important for us to make sure the facilities match the donations we get and that we're able to display them appropriately and that the broader community has the opportunity to engage with them. Certainly the current location, although we appreciate having been given that opportunity, is absolutely not compatible to our long-term activities.
Thanks, Ms Vose. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. Councillor Watson, you have a question?
Yes, I do, and also want to mention for the benefit of new councillors and also the gallery that Judith Vose is a former councillor and former mayor of Boroondara, and thank you for coming in here tonight. we're talking about the possible location of the Kew Historical Society to the tuck stand, but what would be helpful for me is if you could explain to me why being involved, why staying at the Kew Library is preferable to moving to renovated facilities at the tuck stand.
First and foremost, I would say that most historical societies like to remain in their locale. In Burundara, we do have 5 historical societies. 2 have now amalgamated to be in Canterbury, and the others at this stage remain within their postcodes. Hawthorn is sharing with Camberwell at the moment, and but they still have some use down at the library. We see that a great opportunity to work in sync as part of the library services and arts. We go right across the broad spectrum, that a redeveloped library at Kew, if it was done with a double story, would give us the opportunity to remain all of our activities within the Kew boundary. We've appreciated the opportunity to be asked to consider the tuck stand because there was no other option at the time. Now there may be an option into the future. So I'm caught as president in trying to throw up in the air a number of balls and not really getting and wondering how I'm going to balance that and have no real understanding and commitment what is possible. If we end up at the tuck stand, we would be very pleased to make sure it would work as at the top level. We would not be able to share that with other community groups on a day-to-day basis other than having people come in, research and come to exhibitions, because the amount of space that I can see now is going to be difficult, and it will require the way you have to work with acquisitions. They go through a number of processes, and you have to have temperature-controlled rooms to be able to even accept things. Things have to go into refrigeration to kill bugs. So there's a lot of work behind the scenes that people perhaps are not aware of. Yep. But we could, if we couldn't have the Kew Library, if that wasn't possible, because the councillors would have to put the relevant amount of money in, and when we made our original submission there, we suggested things for the future for the library, such as having a recording room so that the public could come along and record their own history or come and have music lessons.
Can I suggest that the answers would be great if they relate to the tuck stand, but not what the library should have. But that's another.
I'm saying that's what the tuck stand would require. Sorry, Chair.
Totally understand then.
Yes. And one more follow-up question. Again, comparing the 2 locations of tuck stand versus Kew Library. In the Kew Library, there are facilities for you to display things for the public. How important is that ability to utilise those display cabinets? How important is that for the Kew Historical Society?
I think it's been a wonderful opportunity, and we get a lot of good feedback from visitors to the library, how much they enjoy the different displays that we turn over.
Thank you very much, Ms Vose.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to thank you, Ms Vose. I'd just like to follow on from Councillor Watson's questions, just so hopefully I've got it clear. So I understand that there are 3 components, is that correct, to what would be required at the tuck stand or elsewhere? And that's 1, storage facilities for the archives that can be climate controlled, 2, display facilities for, I assume, rotating displays as required, and 3, meeting space.
No, there's more than that. We would need, if both Hawthorn and Kew have put forward that they would be prepared to move there if it was provided the facilities. We would need our separate offices. We would need a open space for us to work together, but we would need separate offices. We would need to have our day-to-day documentation separated. We would need the archives collections to sit there and space within it to move around, and also the huge map drawers. They are huge. They've got to be able to be pulled out. We've got to be able to roll them out and work on them. So there's quite a bit of spatial acknowledgement, plus a meeting room. Hawthorn in particular would like, probably the old boardroom might be big enough, there to accommodate their meetings. We would still prefer to hold our members' meetings in Kew at the library, because one would assume that the Phyllis Hall room won't disappear in the redevelopment, because that keeps faith with our Kew residents to be able to come and have our general meetings there.
So just on that point, I know Camberwell have said they'd prefer Camberwell Historical Society would prefer their meetings in Camberwell, so Kew Historical Society would prefer for its public events to continue holding those in the future Kew Library rather than in the Tuck Stand.
Just a correction, our general members' meetings, which are held in the second Wednesday of the month, they're for members and invited guests, and we have a guest speaker. But we still have exhibitions. We work with the Hawthorn Arts Centre, and we've had the privilege of an exhibition there. We've got the space, we utilise space at our upstairs office at the Kew Courthouse, and we see at the Tuck Stand there would be an opportunity to have some exhibition space for the general public to come, but we would still require the general meeting space in Kew for our members.
Thank you. And I realise you were very clear in the challenges in presenting to Councillor Watson and looking for a future vision. And it's probably just to ask you the question perhaps a slightly different way. Do you see the synergy between the historical societies having a greater synergy with libraries and cultural facilities, or with sports facilities and sports precincts? Sports precinct.
I actually don't. I think it works both ways. As I said at the beginning, this should be a living building. You might have sports there at different times. The Heritage Centre, we would have people there working behind the scenes all the time. And it might also have the opportunity to open up more visitations to the stand. But that's to be worked out with council. It's called employment staff.
Surely.
Not all volunteer.
Surely you don't mean the grandstand would be used.
Councillor Franco.
Thank you.
Thank you. There'll be no further questions. I have one small question. Would you be opposed at some stage in the future, for example, for the archive to be located not within, let's say, Kew or even Boroondara, as it grows, and we know space within our municipality is very scarce? Eventually there will be a point where alternative solutions would be needed, as do many larger museums, for example. Would you be opposed to something like that in the future?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You've got to understand that's how we work. We've got to have access it and be able to provide it. We have many people pay us for, that's part of our research and how we also generate income. So it wouldn't work to be out of Boroondara, and the kudos would go for Boroondara.
Okay. Thank you for your response. Thank you very much. There will be no further questions. You may return to the gallery. And thank you for your presentation. The next presenter this evening is Ms. Jessie Dool, followed by Mr. Greg Madigan. Ms. Dool, please proceed. Start with your name and suburb. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Jessie Dool. I am from Docklands. I'm here today representing the AFL as the Government Partnerships and Venue Manager. The AFL fully supports the vision of Council for the redevelopment of the Michael Tuck Stand and Glenferrie Oval. The retention of Glenferrie Oval as an Australian rules football venue is critical to the growth and retention of Australian rules football participants within the municipality, in particular women and girls. Our sports need for new and improved facilities across the state has never been more important. Since the introduction of AFLW in 2017, we've seen the explosion of women and girls' participation, including within Boroondara City Council. Since this time, we've seen women and girls' participation grow from 592 registered participants to 1,264 in 2023 across council. This is anticipated to continue to grow to over 1,500 female participants in the next 3 years. The AFL recommends that ideally no more than 7 teams or 175 participants use one natural turf ground at a time. Currently, there is an average of 253 participants. When we use the ABS population growth data and our current participation rates against council's penetration rates for football, even if growth remained the same, by 2026, we will need access to an additional 18 grounds across the council. Given this, we cannot afford to lose Glenferrie Oval as an Australian rules football venue. This unprecedented growth now sees football and government partners faced with 2 challenges: building the capacity of existing facilities and providing facilities that cater for the diversity to accommodate and retain new participants. The project strongly connects to the AFL's National Infrastructure Strategy. A priority goal within the strategy is to increase the capacity of community football. This can be achieved through the project by providing gender-neutral change facilities for players and umpires, improved ground surface and sports ground lighting, providing additional capacity. The AFL considers Glenferrie Oval, including the Michael Tuck stand, as a critical venue from both a historical perspective and for the current and future participation requirements. Through the Australian Football Facilities Fund, the AFL has a strong history in committing funding to venues that are important to our sports future. And our CEO, Andrew Dillon, has written to Council indicating we stand ready to invest heavily in this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Dool. Councillors, any questions for Ms. Dool? There be no questions. Thank you for your presentation. You may return to the gallery. Mr. Madigan, followed by Ms. Louisa Baker. Ms. Madigan, with your name and suburb, please.
Thank you. Yes, Greg Madigan from AFL Victoria, so we're also based at Docklands.
Thank you.
AFL Victoria is the state body that represents community football and participation across Victoria, and we fully support the vision of the council and redevelopment of the Michael Tuck stand and Glenferrie Oval. Glenferrie Oval's long and proud history of supporting Australian rules football since 1905. Site's been used for football with the Hawthorn Football Club having its base there right up until 2006. Since then, the ground has been used by community football clubs for Auskick, and recently the ground has been limited due to its condition and lack of off-field amenities. The development of community football facilities is a key objective of the AFL and AFL Victoria, as we seek to provide sufficient numbers of well-located, accessible and welcoming football facilities that support the growth of our game and our football leagues, clubs and schools. The need for the redevelopment of Glenferrie Oval and the Michael Tuck stand for Australian rules football is evident. As just mentioned, by 2026 there'll be a need for 18 new ovals. Currently there's a shortfall of 9 new ovals across Boroondara. We see some 39 home games currently being played outside Boroondara, home games for Boroondara clubs, and by 2026 this will get close to 50 home games being played outside the LGA. To support the anticipated off-field participation growth, we obviously need coaches, umpires and volunteers. We believe that the redevelopment of the Tuck stand could include meeting rooms and community space there, and there's the potential for AFL Victoria and other community organisations like the football clubs, schools and groups within the LGA to use this venue to drive incremental coaching, both women's and girls coaches, umpire development and training, and club education. Given this demonstrated need, we cannot afford to lose Glenferrie Oval as an Australian rules football venue. The project will see the redevelopment of Glenferrie Oval, including improved playing surfaces, sports lighting, coaching boxes, drainage, irrigation, and the upgrading of the tuck stand to better support community sport and recreation and other community programs. The project strongly connects with 2 of the 3 priority goals of AFL Victoria, to build the capacity of community football and to drive innovation and growth. These are achieved through this project by providing gender-neutral change facilities for players and umpires, improved ground surfaces, I've said, sports ground lighting and the like. A redeveloped Glenferrie Oval for Australian rules football will have a profound impact on the local community where the game is a huge part of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Madigan. There appears to be no questions. Thank you for your presentation. You may return back to the gallery. Ms. Louisa Becker, please come to the horseshoe table, followed by Mr. Christopher Webster. If you could start with your name and suburb, please.
I'm Louisa Becker and I live in Mont Albert.
Okay.
Good evening. I am the administrator for Burundara Brass as well as a playing member of the groups. We support the implementation of a multi-purpose space at Michael Tuck Stand for the use by brass bands. Our organisation has 2 brass bands who regularly collaborate with community partners to entertain at local events for Burundara residents. Glenferrie Oval was our home for many years, with the Ferguson stand being our rehearsal space and storage space for over a decade, before we had to relocate to the Parkview Room in 2022. And we were also in other spaces at Glenferrie Oval prior to this. Although we are grateful for the work that's been done at Parkview Room to make this work for us as a temporary rehearsal space, there have been some complications that I think could be alleviated by having a space that is built with musical groups in mind. We have an off-site storage space now because there's not enough space at Parkview Room, so when we have events, we're needing to go to a number of locations to collect our equipment. When we need to access our equipment outside of our dedicated hours, we have to organise this in advance, which isn't always practical, and I believe there's been issues with noise and the library users at Camberwell Library. The prospect of a purpose-built space at Michael Tuck Stand holds immense significance for the continuity of our activities and the security of our organisation. Spaces with appropriate acoustic treatment, as well as space for our equipment and a dedicated library are few and far between. But these are necessary factors for us to be able to carry out rehearsals and prepare for performances. It's also a really important factor in creating a sense of place and belonging, which is very important for retaining a strong membership base as well as attracting new members. Investing in music isn't just about rehearsals and performing, it's about social connection and community. Our members have told us that rehearsal is the best part of their week. The band is like their family, and it's really improved their mental health. So I request that you endorse this plan with Burundara Brass to be community tenants at the Michael Tuck Stand, considering the value that arts and culture can bring to this revitalised space. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Becker. Councillor Bigger, you have a question for Ms. Becker?
Just got in. Thank you. Thanks, Louisa. So can I just ask, in terms of the tuck stand, how do you see that suiting what you need and what the band needs?
Well, this would mean having enough storage space for our equipment, potentially even having a separate entrance for the equipment. I know that's kind of been in consideration because at the moment, if another group's using the Parkview Room, we can't go in and access our stuff. So we have to kind of plan in advance. It also needs to be very secure. We have equipment that's worth, over $100,000. Making sure that it's got proper acoustic treatment and is suitable for bands to play in, also for the musicians. So within the space, that sound's not bouncing around. It's safe for people to be playing in there, as well as, of course, for the other tenants.
If I might just continue. So thank you for that. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is, and it's probably difficult for you to say, but it sounds like despite your good nature about it. The Parkview room is not suiting your needs. The question is, I suppose, for me, is whether or not it's that you like something that's not the Parkview room, or that it's exactly that it's the tuck stand. So for you, it doesn't necessarily need to be the tuck stand, but it needs to have the things that you mentioned in terms of a possible other entrance and secure place, and a place that ideally you would have for a long time. So you have that connection with it. Am I reading that right, or no?
Well, we do have a history at Glenferrie Oval, so for the history of our band, it would be ideal to remain at that location. We have been discussing this with council for a long time. I'm not aware of there being other potential appropriate places. You know, we'd be happy to hear if there was some other solution, but I'm not aware that there are any sort of possible places that could work for us and our needs.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Councillor beg your pardon, Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Louisa. Could you explain to us what you do need to store? What is it, musical instruments or?
It's primarily percussion equipment. A lot of that's quite expensive, timpani, vibraphone, and so on. Also brass instruments, so that we remain accessible to people. We own a lot of brass instruments that people can hire, and we store. We also have a very extensive music library. There's music stands, sconces, things that we need for our performances, marching equipment, and so on.
And with the brass instruments, just to get an idea, so it's not just large, it's not, people don't leave their instruments there. These are supplementary instruments, are they?
Yeah, essentially. Should we have, a member come who doesn't have their own instrument, then we've got those sort of to draw on. But yeah, it is primarily the percussion equipment.
And in terms of a rehearsal space, what sort of size space do you require? And probably my knowledge is the movie Brassed Off, so that's what I operate off as an assumption.
I guess it kind of depends on the acoustic treatment. Potentially sort of something this size would be quite appropriate. That's sort of about what we had in our last location. Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Councillor Addis.
Thanks for you coming in. I know it's early days and the plans are rather preliminary, but from what you've seen, you have some expectation that the tuck stand may work for you?
Yes, from what we've seen, there would be enough space for us to hold our rehearsals as well as having our own storage space that can only be accessed by us.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. Thank you, Ms. Becker. Thank you for your presentation. You may return back to the gallery. Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Christopher Webster, followed by Ms. Emily Scott. Mr. Webster, start with your name and suburb. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Chris Webster and I'm from Surrey Hills, although Swinburne is based in Hawthorn. So I'm the president of the Swinburne Amateur Football Club. Our club was formed in 1995 by then Swinburne Chancellor, businessman and philanthropist Richard Pratt to provide opportunities in Australian rules football to students and alumni of Swinburne University, although we are open to all to this day. We play in the Victorian Amateur Football Association and our home is currently St James Park. Being a university club makes us unique not just in Boroondara but across Melbourne, as there are only 6 university Australian football clubs across Melbourne, and Boroondara is home to one of only 4 council areas which is home to a university football club. Swinburne has a strong association with Glenferrie Oval dating back to at least 1914 when the first Swinburne Institute team formed and played home matches on Glenferrie Oval when the ground was not being used by Hawthorn. This practice continued all the way through to at least the early 1960s, the last known record of a Swinburne team prior to our formation. Our club feels strongly that we have inherited the legacy of those teams who were the first students to represent Swinburne in football and did play on that ground. Our current club further played a season at Glenferrie Oval in 1996 after staunch advocacy from our inaugural coach, former VFL player and coach Keith McKenzie, who saw the benefit to the club and the community of regular matches being played on the ground once again. I would note that our club was asked by Hawthorn Football Club to move on and did so, but we would have happily stayed if it would have saved you this effort tonight. Our club feels strongly that based on this historic association as one of the few clubs in the room to have actually played on the ground, that we have a unique position to speak on the past and the future of Glenferrie Oval. We are strongly advocating that the Council adopt the plan proposed tonight to allow AFL to continue to be played on the hallowed turf of Glenferrie Oval, which is holy ground for AFL fans and Hawthorn fans. As a club that is also desperate for an upgrade to our home facilities and has a number of issues that we are working with Council to resolve over the next several years, we certainly empathise with those clubs who are lacking facilities at the moment. We also have a lack of coverage for our supporters who come to attend our matches. Our club rooms are also very small, and we understand why those clubs would like those issues addressed as soon as possible. We're no different. However, given the unique nature of Glenferrie Oval and the history of AFL being played there, or Aussie rules being played there, not just by Hawthorn but by our club and other clubs, we believe it's important to continue football at that ground. We note we are not the only club that is suffering from a lack of adequate facilities. We are also sharing our ground with a junior club, which is having to roster games away from their own home ground to use our ground as well. It's created a lot of issues for us over the past season with issues of tearing up the ground during the season, having difficulty sharing the facilities and the change rooms and having to roster that. And so the freeing up of more grounds for Australian rules football to be played is extremely important. I'd also just like to point out before I finish that some of the 29 responses included on Table 7 at page 79 of the supplementary report did oppose the plan, but only because they believed that that was how to advocate for Swinburne using the ground. Some of those responses which were opposed to the plan were actually advocating for football to be played there. They just wanted Swinburne Amateur Football Club to play at the ground. So that 60% figure of agreement should actually be higher. Thank you very much for your consideration this evening.
Thank you, Mr Webster. Councillor Hollingswood, you have a question, Mr Webster?
Thank you, Mr Chair. Just a very quick question. Thank you for your presentation. I'm just trying to ascertain, so you're talking about Swinburne VFL, AFL code. You're talking about adults playing on the oval?
Yeah, so we represent Swinburne University students, so we're a senior-aged club. We don't have a link to a junior club. And so, yeah, it's a senior-aged football club.
Right. And look, I'll confirm this with the officers later, but my understanding was the oval was no longer deemed appropriate size for adults to play on, but perhaps it's more that it's VFL, AFL league code as opposed to appropriate oval size.
So do you mean are no longer appropriate for Australian rules football to be played on? I guess I would have to leave that to the officers, but my understanding is the proposal is for a women's hub for AFL matches with potential for some other overflow men's or boys or girls football to be played there as well. I think it's more to do with the size of the external area, not so much the playing surface, which can accommodate football, Australian football.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Frank, you have a question?
Thanks. Yeah, quick question, and if you don't know, that's okay. I'll direct it to the officers. But does Swinburne have a link to the oval at Fritz Holster Park, which is being upgraded, and isn't that part of Swinburne University as well?
Unfortunately, we don't have any link to Fritz Holster, so we play at St James Park, and I believe it's Swinburne Senior Secondary which uses that ground, and we don't have any link through them either. So we're a separate and independent club that works with the university, but we don't have any direct contact with them or with the high school.
Thanks.
There have been no further questions. Thank you, Mr Webbs, for your presentation. You may
Thanks very much.
sit in the gallery. Thank you. The next speaker is Miss Emily Scott. Thank you, Miss Scott. Begin with your name and postcode. Oh, suburb, please, and followed by Miss Barker.
Emily Scott, Hawthorn Amateur Football Club in Hawthorn East. Good evening, Chair and Councillors. My name is Emily, and I'm here on behalf of Hawthorn Amateur Football Club as a player and committee member, and I am supported here tonight by President Sam Waldron. HAFC has over 120 current members of a diverse range of ages, genders and abilities, and we as a club support the recommendation to have Glenferrie Oval as an Australian rules football venue. Hawthorn Amateurs has a history with Glenferrie Oval, having our men's teams play there in 2006. Our club not only builds the skills of footballers on field, it is a place people can come to feel supported and part of a family, shown most strongly through our Wings mental health program. While I am not here on behalf of Hawthorn Citizens Junior Football Club and the over 600 players there, we do have a memorandum of understanding with the club to strengthen our pathways. My personal connection started as a child watching Hawthorn Football Club train there every Thursday evening. It is said Glenferrie Oval is the spiritual home of Hawthorn, and I believe it is one of the spiritual homes of Aussie rules. I got to witness my younger brothers attend and learn to love footy through Auskick at Glenferrie Oval, something that I am certain I would have participated in myself if I was a couple of decades younger. This connection flowed through to Hawthorn Citizens Junior Football Club, where I initially was a supporter of my brothers and their teammates, but in more recent years became a coach of one of the girls' teams. Now, as one of the first women's players at Hawthorn Amateurs, the idea of Glenferrie Oval becoming a permanent home for Aussie rules at a local level brings me great joy, and I can only imagine what my eight-year-old self would think now. In summary, I and Hawthorn Amateur Football Club are in support of the recommendation of Glenferrie Oval being home to Australian rules football in winter. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. There being no questions, you may return to the gallery. Thank you. The last presenter this evening is Ms. Mariana Barker.
Thank you to the Chair and Councillors for the opportunity to speak. My name is Mariana Barker, and I'm actually reside in Olinda, but I am the Vice President of the Glenferrie Brass Band, which is the merged bands of Hawthorn and Kew. The band supports the redevelopment of the Tuck Stand and the inclusion of a home for musical groups within the Shire. The original Hawthorn Band Room was sited within the Glenferrie Oval precinct and was the home of one of Australia's most successful A-grade bands. Kew Band were also a very successful A-grade band and represented the Shire overseas on many trips, including to Japan and America. The merger of the bands saw the strength of both coming together in the Ferguson Stand before moving to their current rehearsal space in the Parkview Room. Both bands have a strong history of community involvement and draw members from within the Burundara community and bring talented players from outside into the area to perform. The bands have a strong involvement in Anzac Day, Remembrance Days, Christmas carolling events within the community. Glenferrie wish to continue to strengthen their community ties, and the current band has now started Auburn Brass, which is an entry-level band and is looking to work with local schools to offer music lessons and band lessons to enrich their learning experience. The band provides a structured environment which has been proven to encourage teamwork, leadership and drive positive self-esteem outcomes for its participants. The band provides a year-round activity with varied but structured performances across the different seasons. The Glenferrie precinct has long been the cultural home to this band in its previous forms, and we wish to support the reports of inclusion of providing a space and to be continued to in the inclusion of the redeveloped space, and to express our clear interest in being involved in the processes and ultimately the use of an allocated space within the redeveloped Tuck Stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barker. Councillor Franco, you have a question, Ms. Barker. Thank you.
Just quickly, how do you currently operate with Burundara Brass? Do you co-share, operate on different days?
We operate on different days, but we are both within the same space. We share things like stands and that which are being provided, which both bands can use to limit the amount of stuff that's in there, because as Burundara alluded to, there's a lot of percussion instrument. We have large tubas, things like that. Brass bands take up a bit of space.
Thank you.
Thank you. There being no further questions, you may return to your seat in the gallery. Thank you for your presentation. Councillors, we have finished with the formal presentations. There are two presentations that have been submitted to be read, and I will begin to read those before we move to the next stage. So the first one is by Victorian Amateur Football Association, or VAFA, and it's to the Burundara City Council, Glenferrie Oval and Tuck Stand. The Victorian Amateur Football Association, VAFA, is advocating for the use of Glenferrie Oval and the Tuck Stand as a plain venue and community facility that can support the various VAFA clubs located within the city of Boroondara. With a focus on increased access and showcase of women's football, the VAFA has the experience and strength within the community to highlight the venue with care and professionalism and support the delivery of programmed football during the winter tenancy period. The VAFA has the largest community football women's competition within Australia, with a total of 2,500 players in 2023, showcasing women's football at a renowned football venue like Glenferrie Oval will only strengthen this position. The VAFA's strategic plans are to continue to expand its women's competition, improve playing experience and environments for women, which has been noted within the VAFA's recently delivered women's football strategy. This is attached for our attention, so I'm hoping that it's been circulated. The VAFA competition is governed with a clear set of values, managing strict policies on player and spectator behaviour, and prohibiting the consumption of alcohol outside of enclosed facilities during matches, to ensure that we're always providing a safe and enjoyable environment for all stakeholders. The Boroondara football connection to Glenferrie Oval is steeped in rich history, and the reconnection of football with Glenferrie Oval is a logical and most appropriate choice. The VAFA would ensure that any tenancy or use of Glenferrie Oval would be done with the greatest respect. VAFA will always look to consider the local community while supporting players and members with the City of Boroondara-based VAFA clubs. So that was the VAFA presentation. Now we move to Cricket Victoria. Cricket Victoria is pleased to support the officer recommendation for the future direction and use of the Michael Tuck Stand and Glenferrie Oval. The proposed upgrades to the site creates an exciting opportunity for community cricketers to enjoy now and into the future with the improved playing surface to include a synthetic cricket wicket and a multi-purpose community sporting pavilion. With strong community cricket participation, numbers within the City of Boroondara and many grounds already at carrying capacity. The upgrades at Glenferrie Oval will significantly increase the programming opportunities for the Eastern Cricket Association and local cricket clubs. The upgrades will create an opportunity to increase the use of the facility by both junior and female teams on a weekly basis throughout the summer. The Victorian Cricket Infrastructure Strategy identifies a very clear framework of how Cricket Victoria, the cricket community and government stakeholders view the future development of cricket and associated facilities. The City of Boroondara's vision to improve the quality, safety and functionality of the reserve and increase community use through sport and recreation activities strongly aligns with Pillar 1 with the strategy which aims to maximise the carrying capacity and activation of cricket grounds and facilities. To support the facility upgrades, Cricket Victoria would welcome an application for funding through the Australian Cricket Infrastructure Fund. The ACIF provides funding for community cricket facility projects with a focus on growing participation and promoting accessibility and inclusivity, which are key outcomes to this project. Thank you. So, councillors, we've now formally finished with all the presentations, and I will now return to the officers for matters arising.
And through you, Chair, I'd just like to provide some clarification on information that was provided during the submissions. I'll start with the decision by Football Victoria to disallow use at Dorothy Laver Reserve for Alamein FC after 5 years of being able to use that facility. That came as a surprise to officers, and we are committed to working with Alamein and would like to meet with Alamein and Football Victoria later this week to understand that in more detail. There is also an understanding that there are many other venues that currently do not have grandstands that are able to play NPL, so we'd like to understand that a little better. It would also be useful to indicate there's a whole range of Football Federation Victoria requirements around NPL, not all of which are currently in place at Glenferrie Oval. Some of the requirements are around having a permanent or temporary players race from the change rooms to the field, a PA system, a media viewing area, broadcast filming area, electronic scoreboard, and perimeter fencing of 1.8 metres high. So it's not to say that none of those have to be a barrier. It's just important to be considered that it's more than just the grandstand that Football Victoria have requirements for NPL. So we'd need to understand if they are all required or if there is flexibility to waive some of those requirements. The statistics in the report were provided from each state sporting association, including Australian AFL Victoria, Football Victoria and Cricket Victoria. There was a comment made around many sports being 10 months of the year, and whilst I recognise that many sports will train for long periods of the year, the way that our sporting grounds are allocated is into a summer and winter period for 6 months each. Outside of the summer and winter period, we do have Dorothy Labour, which is an all-round year facility, but other than that, it's a winter season and a summer season, so there are not football clubs who are having all year round allocations, just to provide that clarification. In terms of the size of Glenferrie Oval, it is able to be played by the senior women's Australian rules, and we understand also community level, that is, and also senior men's community level Australian rules. Just for example, we have a number of grounds that are smaller in size than the Glenferrie Oval. For instance, Baldwin Park. Baldwin Park is 151 metres length by 108 metres width, whereas Glenferrie is 168 metres length by 113 metres width. And there are a number of other grounds, including St James Park, that are also in that boat. Just to reiterate the use that's planned through the proposal, we would have juniors playing on the Sunday, which would be a combination of boys and girls junior football, replicating the existing use, and the use proposed on Saturdays would be to have senior women's community level Australian rules teams, and the rationale was really consistent with what many of the submitters stated, regardless of the sport, that the idea is to promote participation by female athletes. The other point to make was we are investing in Dorothy Labour Reserve, as you heard tonight, so $1.2 million is being spent on the playing surface to upgrade that, and that's one of the main reasons referenced by Football Victoria as to why NPL can't be played there. So we believe that the playing surface shouldn't be an issue after this project, which is shortly going to get underway in the next couple of months.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to also just reiterate and thank all the submitters tonight for their presentations. I think it's really important to remember that we're in an incredibly fortunate position to have such an incredible amount of community interest that is really going to activate this building. And the vision and design brief that's being presented to Council tonight is a flexible, long-term use framework that will allow a range of different uses for a very diverse group of people to be able to enjoy this building. And I think that Judith Bose's presentation summed it up when she talked about it being a living building. That's what the vision and design brief is trying to achieve, is a living building that has a lot to offer to a lot of different types of interests in our community. It's also trying to be sensitive to the surrounding precinct. It has houses and residential properties very nearby, so we've got to balance that activation with local amenity as well. I think it's also important to, all the submissions were in support of the principle of what it can accommodate in terms of a multi-purpose facility, and that is really consistent with existing endorsed council policy that this council has already endorsed, whether it's the pavilions guideline, the asset leasing policy, the Ellie Bray and Grace Park master plan, and just most recently, as of 3/4 of an hour ago, the Glenferrie Place plan. So if you look at page 79, talks about a multi-purpose facility with sport and rec and arts and culture. So I think we can definitely look to accommodate a really broad range of uses, which will be incredibly important. And the expression of interest process that's proposed as part of this report will give us an ability, once the vision and design brief is endorsed, to really work through the issues as part of the next stage. But it's really critical that we are able to get on with it. The building's been closed for about 18 years, and we're really keen to be able to take the next step. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr McHugh and Ms McGackie. Councillors, any questions for the officers? Councillor Biggar, followed by Councillor Franco.
Thank you. So maybe I'll just start with the last first, if I could. You just said, Ms McCarkey, and it just made me think about, you said that this is an approach that's designed to have, flexible use approach for the building for the future, which is I think, appealing. But I'm just wondering how that fits with a couple of things we heard tonight. It sounded like from the needs of the bands, for instance, that they have very specific needs for very specific acoustic designs and in terms of storage and things, those spaces would have to be, I would presume, fitted out pretty appropriately. And certainly for the historical societies, from what Ms. Voss said, that's also, very specific design needs in terms of the maps and the chilled rooms and lots of other things. And so, and I don't have any issue about the value of both of those, both the bands and the historical societies for our community. What I'm just wondering is how those ideas would fit with a flexible approach, unless we're thinking that we could design and then redesign later, or...
No, I'm happy to answer that, Chair, through you, Chair. So that's the whole intent of a detailed design stage, is that you work through all those logistical issues about specific requirements and operational needs. But the reason why this report is proposing that we do an expression of interest is to really seek and get some greater clarity from the groups around their interest, their desire, the operational and logistical issues prior to commencing that detailed design stage. So we've got just another step in the process. It's going to enable us to unpack that. But regardless, the vision and design brief talks about those community and partnership spaces on level 1, and if whatever reason any of our groups decide through that EOI process they don't want to be part of it moving forward, there's a huge amount of interest from community organisations who want to be able to access and use this space to activate it for the community.
Thank you. Just to follow on then, looking at the officer's recommendation, so it's saying it prioritizes local historical societies and community bands through this expression of interest. Does that mean the expression of interest process would only be for those groups to put in an EOI, or would it be broader than that? No,
it's only if they choose to put in, they will be prioritised, because as they've pointed out tonight, we've been talking to these two, both historical societies and the bands, for about a good 5+ years, perhaps longer. And we didn't want to make them feel like they were suddenly having the rug pulled out underneath them, that if they chose to participate in the expression of interest process, that they would be prioritised given the long standing discussions we've had with both those groups.
Yeah, I guess it just seems to me we'd have to maybe clarify what that means to prioritise in that context, wouldn't we?
Yeah, and most EOIs have expression of interest have a selection criteria, so we would do it through that process.
Great, thank you. I just have another question about, if I might, about, so I'm trying to understand, I suppose, the relative growth of the different sporting codes, because it feels to me like what we've got in the report. Well, in terms of soccer, sorry, I'll call it soccer to differentiate, it it feels like, and from what I think Mr. Hassett said from Football Victoria, that they've had this growth, or maybe what he said also was that, and I probably should have clarified this with him, but he suggested that smaller growth in soccer might be due to long wait lists, meaning that there is greater demand. It's not being shown because players are being turned away. Do we have any evidence about that one way or another? Because it does feel like, in the ether anyway, that there's a view that women's soccer particularly is growing in leaps and bounds, but that didn't show up in this report.
Through you, Chair. I'll start off by saying it's actually a good problem to have, believe it or not. The issue we do have, though, is that there is a lot of demand, increasing demand regarding female participation. The stats in the report, as I said, are taken from the state sporting associations. So you can see we've got there some trends over the 5 years, and the stats speak for themselves. I would add to that, though, your question around, is there any unmet demand? How do we know it's just not those existing clubs with access to grounds are, doing well and the rest are not? So we've got some information regarding that, and I'll just go through it now. So we've got a number of, I'll just start with by sport and alphabetically, Australian rules. So we've got a number of clubs who are having to play outside of Boroondara. So in 2019, we had 49 Boroondara home matches played outside of Boroondara due to a shortage of availability. Just bear with me. We also had 2 Boroondara Australian rules clubs stop accepting new participants in 2020. And there were many other games during the season that were moved off Boroondara grounds due to poor ground conditions because of increased participation, which is having an impact on all of our grounds. Cricket is also experiencing high demand. Friday nights are at capacity for junior play, so they're looking at playing on other days of the week just to fit all the need in. And in terms of soccer, I know it's preferred to be called football as well, but for the sake of it, I'll call it soccer too. In 2023, many games were moved off Boroondara grounds, including some mentioned like Dorothy Labour, Hayes Paddock South and Willsmere, resulting in playing these games away from their home ground, again due to similar reasons around increased participation and poor ground conditions as a result. And there are some soccer clubs in the municipality that are having to hire grounds outside of Boroondara, which we heard about from some of the submitters earlier on. That's the anecdotal information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. The next, Councillor Franco, followed by Councillor Gold. Councillor Franco.
Thank you. Just for clarification purposes, how many seats does the grandstand at Glenferrie cater for?
1,476, I believe.
So 1,000 plus seats. Okay. And how many grandstands do we have for sports facilities in Boroondara? I'm aware of Camberwell Sports Ground. That's the only one I'm familiar with.
Again, through you, Chair, Camberwell Sports Ground has a grandstand as well as Glenferrie Oval and the tuck stand.
So we have 2 grounds with grandstands, and at, I think it's worth clarifying this, at Camberwell Sports Ground, Camberwell Magpies play there, and they're a Premier League cricketer team, aren't they?
That's correct.
So we support that grandstand, and we renovated that grandstand, and they use that, correct?
That particular grandstand is supported like all of our other assets. I couldn't say what investment it's had in it, but it's supported to be an active asset.
But to be clear, it's being used for Premier League cricket.
It's being used for all of the clubs that use that ground, including Premier League cricket and Australian rules football.
Okay, yeah, and that probably is the number, but it can be used for Premier League and for community at the same time and activates that stand. So how would from an officer's point of view, and I appreciate I probably have a slightly different view, how does the current proposal for community football and cricket activate and utilise, or would activate and utilise, the grandstand at Glenferrie?
The proposal would have those community sports as per the report, with community level Australian rules football for females on Saturday and juniors on Sunday, cricket, particularly junior cricket, in the summer, and all of those clubs would be able to use the grandstand. The grandstand is a feature of the heritage listing of the tuck stand, so it would certainly be available to all of those users, and there is potential for other community uses outside of the sport.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Councillor Galt.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any questions tonight, but when the time is right, I'm happy to move a motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Galt. I'll keep that in mind. Councillor Sinfield, followed by Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Sinfield.
Thanks, Chair. Through you two officers, I'm wondering if there is the potential for grants to expedite the delivery of stage 2, or if that timeline in the report will remain unaffected. I know, I understand it's hypothetical. We haven't received any grants.
Through you, Chair. You just took the words out of my mouth. Is that it's kind of, you can't really count the money until you've got the money. So it's possible, yes, but until those funds have been confirmed, I couldn't make any public commitments around that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth.
I believe Councillor Franco asked a series of questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Addis.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just a query on page 77 or page 6 of 47. We've got a list of organisations that made submissions to council. I'm just wondering if Kew Historical Society should be there. I'm not sure if they made a submission, but I'm assuming they probably did, or is it not counted as a submission?
Kew Historical Society did write to us. It was outside the consultation period time, so it wasn't counted, but they certainly did write to us during that period.
Okay, so they're the ones that are within the time frame that are listed here.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. And just another question. Would it be fair to say that all of the main sports believe they're undercatered for, that they're all asking for more? I'll leave it there and just leave it as a question.
You would like an answer, right?
I suspect I know what the answer is, but I'd like an answer.
Through you, Chair. To varying degrees, there wouldn't be too many sporting clubs that wouldn't have requests or priorities for infrastructure at the grounds they use. Very difficult to quantify, but that would be a fairly consistent position, not only across Boroondara but across Melbourne, with population growth and inability to put new grounds in landlocked areas.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Addis, for your question. There'll be no further questions for the officers. Councillor Galt, I return to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move tonight the officers' recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Galt. Is there anybody prepared to second this? Councillor Sinfield.
Happy to second that, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Is there any opposition to this? We have, yes, Councillor Bigger, Councillor Park and Councillor Franco. There have been opposition to this. Councillor Galt, as the mover, do you wish to speak to your motion?
I most certainly do. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start by thanking the officers. This has been a long and arduous process you've gone through and a very thoroughly researched report. I've got to say, there's been a lot of discussions around demand tonight, and we raised those in the advisory group a number of times. And thank you for all the work that's been put in to quantify it and put some numbers around it. I don't think any of the committee were wedded to any of the sports, but I'm happy to be guided, I think, as most of the committee were, with your recommendations that come back from that numerical study. I'd have to point out also there was a very strong communications program put together. Many people attended, and I think you got a very great level of support for that. And the level of support was for what is before us tonight, for the combination of sports, for the facilities that you're proposing, and they were strongly supported within the community. Just jumping on to the tuck stand itself, this is a marvellous resource for Boroondara. It's been lying vacant. I had 10 years, but I'm listening tonight, it's 17 years since it was used properly. It's a long time for it to be lying vacant. And from a visit last week, it is clearly deteriorating, and it's just in the nick of time that we're starting to catch it up and keep up with it. The proposal before us tonight, whilst proposing specific uses, does in the longer term provide some flexibility. Most of the things that we've looked at, you could adjust them to suit a range of sports later. It's a general, and I was given great comfort, and I think we all were, by the fact that it was usable for a whole range of things with small adjustments. It also provides new facilities for cricket, which currently really aren't there, potentially freeing up other grounds for cricket within Boroondara. Further, I think our need to make decisions on the upper level are wisely put forward to stage 2, because clearly there's a lot more discussion that has to go on with the bands, with the historic societies. I think they're all a little bit up in the air, so I welcome those ongoing discussions. But tonight I'd like to plead for getting the barbed wire down, getting the design underway, and getting this facility operating and activated at long last after 17 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. As the seconder, Councillor Sinfield, do you wish to speak or reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Hollingsworth, Councillor, followed by Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have some reservations, but I'm also very much humbled by the presentations this evening and the level of support for our tuck stand, and it reinforces how much we need to invest in this and do it as quickly as possible so that we can facilitate the use of it. I'm unresolved with the, soccer versus AFL and cricket, and I do have some reservations there. But I also will request an amendment to the motion at a later stage should this motion fail. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Franco.
Thank you. I'm not going to support this motion. For me, this is a sports precinct and the tuck stand is a sports facility, and I think it should be primarily used for sports and sports-related purposes. I think there is great merit in council supporting our brass bands and supporting our historical societies. They do an amazing job, but doing this at the expense of the need for the sports clubs and in the middle of a sports precinct is highly questionable. It reads simply as a glorified storage facility at a cost of up towards $30 million of ratepayer money. I just can't in good conscience go down that path. I think there is a genuine synergy between the historical societies and other cultural facilities, and I think they would be better served with a closer proximity to our libraries or a dedicated facility, and I don't think that requires a $30 million expenditure or $28 million expenditure to achieve that, if that's what we're seeking to achieve with the stand itself. In relation to the sports codes, there is great demand I also don't support the current approach, and I prefer the alternate approach that is outlined in the council officer's report. It's not because of a hostility to one code or supporting one code over another. It's the unique nature of what's at this venue. If the sports field and the Oval could cater to high-level cricket and Australian rules football, then that would be fabulous. It would be a great way of activating the grandstand and utilising it for what it is and for what it's meant to be. And from a heritage point of view, if we're going to restore a sports pavilion and grandstand, what we want to see is that used as a grandstand, and it won't be used for the current purposes. And I know this from first-hand experience, from having taken my own children when they played Australian rules football and standing out there as a parent. That grandstand is not really needed or used for promoting and supporting community-level sport. We do need facilities for Australian rules football and for cricket, I recognise that, but is this, apart from the historic connection, the ideal location? We have a grandstand here that can be used. We have 2 senior women's soccer teams, I'll use that are having to play outside a facility because we don't have, you know, the facilities we committed as a council in writing to provide to them. And in relation to the other grandstand, we do have a grandstand, the only other one. It's in my ward, Camberwell Sports Ground. It's a fabulous facility. The grandstand is activated and used by community teams, but also by Premier League cricket, as it should. And it's great that that facility is there and that we support those uses. But we have an opportunity, that unique nature of a 1,000 plus grandstand, to actually see it used and to promote in a unique way female football, soccer, and soccer more broadly, in a way that would bring a unique
thank you,
charm.
Councillor.
And I'll just make one final closing remark.
You're way over time.
One very final last remark. For those who think on history, look at Lakeside Oval. It was the home of the South Melbourne Australian rules football team for 100 years. And government saw fit to turn that into a rectangular stadium and didn't find that too challenging, and it gets used, and it's an iconic venue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Councillor Bigger, are you wishing? Yes, thank you.
I am. That's why my light's on. So I believe that we're making this decision, the sport decision tonight, without substantial support. Community support. I do appreciate that we have difficulty getting people engaged and giving us their feedback. I absolutely appreciate that. And so often we have to use the community feedback on something like this as a guide. However, in the report, and also tonight, I've heard officers and councillors say that there's strong support for this sport option. And I just can't let that go. We had only 475 people who responded to the survey, with 60%, which is not overwhelming, in favor. That's something like 285 people who support this focus on these sports. In addition, 12% were unsure and even confused about what they wanted it to be used for. And another 27% were opposed. These are very small numbers. These are not the numbers that I think it can get us to say, yes, there's resounding support in this community for this use of this very iconic, very important building that we are going to put a significant amount of resources into. I think there have been questions raised about the growth in numbers. I appreciate that it sounds like there's demand for all sports, but it probably makes it even more important that we make this decision carefully and thoughtfully and appropriately. I don't feel that it's really that. I mean, the question about whether or not we have a strategy for instance, for this growth that we're seeing in soccer. I don't think that's been particularly answered. I'm not sure, we're not making the decision specifically about the historical societies and the bands tonight. We're making a decision about an EOI process, so I'm not completely sure. It's not completely clear to me why we have to make the decision about the sporting codes right now. I also don't see the sense in placing the historical societies and the bands in the tuck stand, even though they're both very important and valued parts of our community. I get the sense that they're both saying, yeah, we'll go there because we want to go somewhere and we want a place to call home and we want it to work for us. But these are going to be very specialized needs. And some of us walked through the tuck stand last week, and it is, it's a bit of a shell, but it is without doubt a sporting precinct. And no matter what we do to it, how we renovate it, how we use that space, it is a grandstand, and that's what it will always be. So to me, I don't think we have this quite right. I think we're not ready to make this decision. So I won't be supporting this tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Vigor. Councillor Adders.
I share some reservations about the tenants, but I think it's very clear that is something for the future, that these are possibilities, and that we actually have time to talk further with particularly our historical societies, Kew namely, who, in my view, should be within their own community, but this states very clearly that there'll be an expression of interest process, and yes, they'll be given priority, but equally other arrangements could be made. So it seems very sensible to support this motion and get on with the primary purpose of this building, which is for sport. So I think it makes sense to support it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Look, I realise I have spoken before. I just wanted to articulate now some comments that I may not get the opportunity to if the motion is supported. The reservations I have is predominantly with item 2, 3 and part of item 4. And I do agree with Councillor Franco and Councillor Bigger that there could still be some further interrogation of the actual tenants of the whole facility, not just the internal aspects of the Glenferrie Pavilion. I would like to see 1 and 2 predominantly removed, but also item 4, finish at the comment where it says to determine community tenants for the Michael Tuck stand, shared community and partnership spaces, full stop, and then remove the which prioritises local historical societies and community bands. And again, I'm not diminishing the importance of those, but what I'm proposing is potential.
Councillor Hollingsworth, I'm sort of at difficulty to find where to place what your remarks are. Are you proposing to change the motion in that way?
Yes, but I just wanted to provide some context that I'm not opposed to the revitalisation of Tuck stand. I just have concerns with the motion. So a possible amendment to the motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. I will be supporting this motion tonight. I see that it is a beginning and not an end. One of the things that I'd like to explore on this journey that will be the tuck stand, and perhaps my reservations are not reservations as such. It's I don't believe we've been fully informed because we've asked officers to do a report on a strategy report on our historical society. So I see this as a step forward. I look forward to things perhaps adjusting and changing over time. So I don't see this as a completely set in stone. I see this as a start. I definitely support the tenancy model and not the hub. I think it gives the widest breadth for community sport in the municipality. So I'll leave my comments at that.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Park.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with what's been said by Councillors Bigger and Franco. I won't add to that, but they've effectively stated the reasons for my opposition to this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Park. Councillor Gillies, followed by Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief because a number of the points in support of this recommendation are remarks that I too support. I will be supporting this. And one of the things that came out in the report and in the presentations was the note that one of the senior soccer clubs commented on the freeing up of current competitive situations that competing codes have got over grounds will actually be potentially relieved by the use of this ground by a different shared arrangement. And that correlates with my understanding of the other major football club who are also seeking development of their current home ground, not necessarily this ground. I actually think we are ready for an EOI process. I think that is the next logical step to undertake. I feel that the report allows for the flexibility and the input to continue, and that's the journey that we're on. I don't think we're locking much out, but we're opening up opportunities. So I'll be supporting this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Councillor Sinfield.
Thanks, Chair. Phase 1 is underway, thankfully, very excitingly, and Phase 2, I hope, can happen quickly so we can get Glenferrie Oval back into circulation as an option and an opportunity for our community. I've been on the steering committee for this for a number of years now, and I'm excited to see sport played once again on Glenferrie Oval. As a mum of 2 boys and 1 girl, I hope that they all have the opportunity to play there. And don't take my comments out of context, but I'm actually quite opposed to the concept of a women's hub because there is nothing better than a home game. And whichever club that is, whether it's a women's club or a men's club, to have that as your home crowd, to have the other teams playing on that day before and after you is so good for club morale. It builds clubs, the canteens running, all those sorts of things. But if you constantly have away games played there, you lack that extra edge, you lack that community spirit, I feel. Community sport is our remit, and I thank the organisations that have come to submit tonight beyond what we know as our standard community clubs, and the submissions from Cricket Victoria and VAFA in writing, but also the submissions from AFL and AFL Victoria. And I note that the funding and grant opportunities with these larger organisations will help us to deliver better facilities for our community. Their investment in community level sport, despite the fact that they come from big offices in Docklands and so forth, their investment and their commitment is clear. And I hope that we can capitalise on that to deliver the best facilities we can for our community. The Heritage Victoria Statement of Significance is certainly worth looking at and noting as well, and the Hawthorn Footy Club moved in to that facility in around 1905, and it certainly plays a very, very strong part in Hawthorn's history. But I note also a map that I found and circulated to colleagues earlier about the Hawthorn Cricket Club, or Hawthorn Cricket Ground as it was known, which I think may have been from the late 1800s. So to see cricket replayed on Glenferrie Oval again, I think is a fantastic thing for our community. Councillor Bigger noted earlier that this is without strong community support, but I do note that, in fact, the absence of the Grace Park residents here tonight, I would suggest, is a very strong show of support for the proposal in front of us this evening. I encourage my colleagues to support the officer's report and the motion put by Councillor Galt. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Exactly on 3 minutes. Having exhausted all the speakers, I return to you, Councillor Gold, to close off the debate.
Thank you, Chair. Is it possible at this point in time to make a minor amendment to the recommendation? Or is that verboten in the way we're moving forward? It's a motion.
What I suggest we do is that we hear what the change or the proposed change is, and if it's a minor change, it'll be appropriate to do it now. If not, we would have to do it by an amendment process.
Very, very minor. Yeah. A number of my colleagues are a little bit concerned about the prioritisation of certain uses under item 4, and the request has been put that we end up ending 4 at the word spaces and remove the word which prioritises local historical societies and community bands.
Mr. Chair, I wonder if I can provide some background as to why those words are there. And they are there very deliberately. We have for a long time spoken with the bands, to perhaps start with that group, about the fact that this would be their home. They would be displaced from what was their home, Ferguson Stand. And one of the conditions of their willingly agreeing to move out of the Ferguson Stand was that we would put them in the Tuck Stand. The historical societies have also been the subject, as we've already heard tonight, of quite a long-range discussion about coming into this facility. So there's nothing new for them in that regard, and it is, in fact, showing respect to those two organisations that we believe in the OI process they should have some comfort in knowing we're going to keep our word. We said certain things to them as part of the changes which were made, and what we would like to do is to show respect for the commitment by ensuring they understand that in a competitive environment, there is going to be some extra consideration given to any proposal they may submit to us as part of an expression of interest. So that's why they are there.
I fully understand that and supported its inclusion, but I've just had a request put to me to do that. I'm presuming point 4, when it's resolved, would come to council in any event.
Through you, Chair. I think given the amount of interest in this project, I think that would be a reasonable request. We could bring that back.
Okay, I'm happy to leave it as it stands at this point in time. We'll deal with it later. I'll now close the debate, if I may.
Can I just make a procedural comment? If Councillor Galt wants to amend the motion, or somebody else wants to, somebody can move an amendment to that effect, and it can be debated separately.
Yeah, Councillor Franco, that was said, and Councillor Galt decided to make the decisions he's made, so it's Councillor Galt's decision.
The mover can't move an amendment.
No, whoever's advising and suggesting to Councillor
Galt. Councillor Franco, the way that I saw things was Councillor Galt was explained the process. If it's a minor amendment, he actually did go through the motions, and then he decided not to go through it because it was explained to him that it was probably not appropriate. Exactly. So the suggestion is if somebody else wants to move an amendment, like Councillor Hollingswood, she can do that.
Thank you. I would like to move an amendment. Can I speak to that now? I just want to check that now.
What's the amendment, Councillor Hollingswood?
Right, the amendment is to complete
number 4 at the word spaces full stop. And I just wanted to speak to, I acknowledge.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I now speak to why I'm proposing this amendment?
We are going to start debate again. So, yes. Can you speak to your amendment?
I can speak to the amendment. Thank you.
Is there any opposition to this amendment? There's opposition to this amendment.
Thank you.
Please proceed speaking to your amendment. Yeah.
Look, while I appreciate everything the CEO has just explained, by no means does this diminish the significance of the band or the historical societies, but I'm just concerned that it says expression of interest and yet it is prioritising. So to have a very open expression of interest, it is good to afford the opportunity for people to put forward their expression of interest for this. But it also then provides council with opportunity to potentially consider other alternate options for location of these particular clubs and entities. But at the same time, when expressions of interest come in, we can consider all expressions of interest. So I just believe that this doesn't go down a foregone conclusion, but it still provides some flexibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Park, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
Sure, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Park. Any other councillor wish to speak to Councillor Gillies? Councillor Addis, followed by Councillor Gillies.
Me?
Yes.
Okay. To me, prioritise means prioritise. So I was entirely comfortable with it in its original form.
Councillor Gillies, followed by Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. Pretty much the same. It doesn't preclude examining all expressions of interest that come in, but those words give some integrity and honour to the discussions that have been going on already. I feel that taking them out potentially undermines them and actually risks the conversations that have been had in good faith to date. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Councillor Sinfield.
Thanks, Chair. I note similar comments to that made by Councillor Gillies. The words which are amended to be removed, they don't bind any particular community group to taking up the accommodation within this space, be they local historical societies or community bands, one or the other, or in fact all of them. So we will still go through the motions. It simply honours the agreement and the understanding, as the CEO remarked earlier. So my preference would be for that second half of the sentence to remain. However, the content of the vision and design brief itself will remain unchanged regardless of what this sentence says. So it's largely inconsequential.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Councillor Franco.
I don't think the amendment goes far enough. This is an iconic sports facility, and regardless of what code of sport, of football goes there, it should prioritise sports and sports-related uses. That's my view, and we can find better homes, more suitable for the historical society and community bands. Now, I wouldn't suggest that they shouldn't lodge an expression of interest in other community uses that we may not be aware that might be complementary, but it's an iconic sports venue in a sports precinct. Let's think about that and think about what we're doing with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. There have been no further expressions to speak. I'll now put the amendment... Sorry, close out. Oh, I beg your pardon. We'll close out the debate. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, and appreciate Councillor Franco's comments. As I said before, by no means does this diminish the importance of the band or historical societies, but an expression of interest is to provide a genuine opportunity for consultation. This is prioritising and predominantly locking in. So I think if we are generally offering an expression of interest, it's troublesome to see that it's prioritising a particular group in there. I would just like to see some flexibility in the event that another home be determined that may be better for these, or potentially a better use for the tuck stand. It gives council flexibility in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. We are now ready to put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour of the amendment? All those opposed? The amendment has been defeated, so we're back to the substantive motion. Councillor Gold.
Thank you, Chair. There's been a lot of discussion around tonight about the dedication to a single sport. I think we got a lot of assurances as we went through it, because a lot of the proposed changes to the stand will be needed for most of the sports we'd contemplate. It's just at this point in time, as we're briefing architects, we need to give them fairly clear guidance on where we're heading. We were also confused about the numbers. There was a lot of interest in this stand, and the numbers were put together and very clearly indicated the direction we should be heading in. This is a great facility, and it can be adjusted over time if need be. This is particularly so with historic societies and bands. We've got lots of time to make that decision. So, and I think we'll bring that all back to council. Going to the discussion on point 4, I'm sure we'll bring that back to council at that time and have a thorough debate. But I'd just like to get this stand, the Architects Commission, and get it underway. The repairs are going marvellously well. We need to move to the next phase and know that it can suit a whole lot of purposes that will benefit Burundara. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. We've now reached the time in the debate that we will put the motion. All those in favour of the motion? Thank you. All those against? The motion is carried. Thank you,
I'll call a
councillors.
division.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Franco. All those in favour of the motion? I'll call them out one by one, and you can put your hand down as I call them. Councillor Addis, Councillor Watson, Councillor Gillies, Councillor Gold, Councillor Hollingsworth, Councillor Sinfield, Councillor Stavrou. All those against? Councillor Franco, Councillor Biggar, Councillor Park. Thank you, councillors. We've finished this item now, and I would like to thank the officers for an amazing amount of work, the councillors for a very robust debate, and also everyone in the gallery, those that spoke for and against. The passion was absolutely evident. That gives us a feeling that this is a great opportunity for us to move to the next level. It doesn't preclude future uses in different way at all. As a society, we'll be evolving and reevaluating everything. So thank you all for contributing tonight. Appreciate that.
Councillor Watson.
Oh, Councillor Watson, I beg your pardon.
Yes, so I'd like to propose that we have a small adjournment before our next item.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Addis. All those in favour for a small adjournment? Motion's carried. Thank you. We will adjourn for a few minutes. During the meeting, Councillor Sinfield is very happily to second it. Do we have support for this? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's resume the meeting. We've got.
The other councillors. Because it's just general business and urgent business.
Well, we're going to close it there anyway.
Exactly.
So call the other councillors.
Yeah, so just call. I'll call the
Yeah.
other
We have resumed the meeting. We're waiting for some of the other councillors, but we will continue the business of the council. The next item for tonight is general business. Are there any general business, councillors? No, there'll be no general business. Any urgent business? No urgent business. Confidential business. Councillors, there is a confidential item in tonight's agenda, and we would like to get a motion up to close the meeting for the confidential item. But before I do that, I will explain it to those in the gallery and those that are watching online. Some items in the agenda require confidentiality because they are of sensitive commercial nature, and it would prejudice other council or the commercial enterprise. For those items, we have a process mandated by the Local Government Act that they're able to transact business in a confidential way. And this is what we're proposing to do that now. We will move a motion to do that, and after the motion is passed, the meeting will go into confidentiality mode. The gallery will then be evacuated and all public video will be stopped. Councillor Park, you wish to move a motion?
Yes, Chair, I move the motion that's on the screen.
Councillor Sinfield, you wish to second it?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Councillors, anybody opposed? There'll be no opposition. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. We will close the meeting now for the confidential part of the... We are now back live. For those of you that have joined us this evening, we have come back from the confidential item to be at the end of our meeting. So before I close the meeting, I'd like to thank you all who've joined us this evening, both in the gallery and online, and declare the Services Delegated Committee meeting now closed. Thank you.